Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. Today is Wednesday, November 4th. We are here for a briefing. We have one item under board members, one under executive services, two items under academic services, and followed by public comments and member comments, board attorney comments, superintendent comments, good of the order. And Ms. Fisher will not be with us for this meeting. Something came up and she's not unable to be with us. So if we could go ahead and get started. The first thing on the agenda is the quarterly reports for the school board advisory committees. And when you come up, if you can just please introduce yourself. That way everybody knows who you are. And we'll start off with construction, please. No one's here from construction.
I don't see Ryan.
And we all did receive all their information and their reports on board docs. So if you wanted to read that, is there anybody here that will speak on construction? Ms. Morgan, you're the...
I'm the liaison, and I have to say that I think they really got off to a great start, and Mr. Richards covered it in his email or his report. They are really gung-ho about finding out what we're doing countywide in the technical colleges and in the high schools with respect to career development, and well, actually Rita's sitting right there. She knows how it went. It was a really great meeting, and I think going forward, there will be considerably more active engagement by the building community in some of the programs that we're offering at our technical colleges. So
great.
Brian probably would have said something to that effect.
Okay, and then next we have CSI Advisory Committee. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't think is that on?
No.
I hear it now.
She fixed it.
Great, thank you.
Ryan McLean with the CSI Advisory Committee. The committee's met twice since the start of the academic year, and on our September 16th school meeting, School Board Attorney Kathy Dupree Bruno reviewed the policies and procedures for the advisory committee. We had a pretty in-depth Robert's Rules session as well, which was very informative. In addition, the mission, the meeting norms and attendance, the policies of the committee were all reviewed. The committee is set to meet on the second Wednesday of every month for the rest of the academic year. And we're going to do those via Zoom, except for the January 13th meeting. If all goes well, fingers crossed, we'll be able to be together in person, according to whatever rules we have at that time. Sydney McClung, our liaison, provided an overview of the district strategic plan, and the school board liaison, Ms. Gittens, discussed items that cover all parts of the strategic plan with us. Ms. Gittens also advised the committee that communication is really an overarching theme throughout all the initiatives, and it's an important factor for our committee to be addressing. Committee members were asked to respond to a survey and rank the topic areas that Ms. McClung would use to schedule presentations by key stakeholders. So we ranked them kind of in order by individual. And the results of that survey indicated the top 3 areas of focus for the committee were: number 1, whole child academic success; number 2, whole child social and emotional learning; and number 3, student-focused technology innovations. At the October 14th meeting, the committee heard a presentation by the Curriculum and Instruction Academic Directors focused on Envision 2030 Objective 1, which is increased student success, and really focused on the core subject matter of that indicator. Staff shared their strategies for addressing this indicator through a variety of well-developed plans. The committee, we appreciate the detailed strategies shared and noted the hard work of all staff involved. Committee members also mentioned the importance of sharing this work with the community, again going back to what Ms. Gittens and the committee said is an overarching thing, a theme of really communication. Our next meeting is to be held Wednesday, November 11th 6 to 7:30 via Zoom. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next is Curriculum Advisory Committee, please.
Good afternoon. Our chair was unable to be here today, so I'm Lori Houchin, and I serve as Director of Curriculum for middle school.
Thank you.
So we met once in September, of which we did our elections for our chair and our vice chair. Mrs. Fisher came on board as our board liaison. We also had a presentation from the board attorney, and it was very thorough and gave us a lot of great information on rules and procedures. The curriculum team went over the language arts textbook adoption timeline, and we did a call for volunteers to serve on this committee. And then we landed on a topic of interest for our team to study further, which was social and emotional learning. So in October, Lori Brooks and Mary Lynn Rodriguez did an overview of where we are as far as implementation of curriculum and teacher support and student support for social and emotional learning. We solidified our ELA reading timeline and secured the 3 volunteers. And then in November, we will follow up with 2 or 3 schools are going to present their implementation plan and their successes and challenges with social and emotional learning to better service our students.
Great, thank you. District Advisory Council, please.
Good afternoon. Scott Hertz, who is our chairperson, cannot be here. He's in court. So I'm going to go ahead and give us our update. We have had 2 meetings so far for our district advisory. The first meeting, very similar to the other advisory committees. We had Attorney Dupe Bruno go over all the rules and processes and procedures for a board advisory. And also at that first meeting, we collected input from all of our levels. We break up into elementary, middle, and high school into our breakout rooms. And we asked our community to give us what are topics, what are of concern for you right now. And so at that first meeting, we collected those topics of concern, brought them back to our executive DAC, and at our last meeting, we had a presentation by Candace Oliveto, Lori Houchin, and Dr. Bethany Quisenberry on the Google Classroom and Lee Home Connect. There was a great deal of interest around creating some commonality with our Google Classrooms and Lee Home Connect. So they did a presentation about all the instructional planning that took place prior to the first day of school. They also shared with them some of the instructional routines that should be common across the district, as well as best practices that are currently being offered and also are in place. In addition, a lot of the technology support that we have for teachers. And then when they were done presenting, they left with one big question that our team went back into the breakout groups with. And their overarching question was, what additional communication can be established to improve effectiveness? And this was really about how can we improve communication across the district in the area of curriculum and instruction in particular, so that we have some predictability for our parents at home. So there was some great conversation that took place. Honestly, this is my second year doing DAC, and it was one of the best meetings that I personally attended because of the input that was given across all 3 levels. Because we've been on Zoom, the attendance has been phenomenal. The first meeting we had were 110 parents. The last meeting we had were 101 parents that attended the meeting. We have our next executive DAC this Monday coming up, where we're going to go over all the input from the 3 levels and talk about our next in-depth conversation all around the area of communication. That's district advisory.
Great, thank you. Ms. Gittens, you have a question?
I know I've gotten, I don't know about anyone else, but I've gotten a lot of communication from parents about the reporting and the dashboard and where we're at with the COVID reporting. Can you address that at this point, or is that someone else? Or what are you telling the members of DAC as to how that's set up?
That was not a topic of conversation that came up at DAC, but I'm certainly willing to take that topic and bring it to our executive DAC on Monday to add it to part of the conversation. So that was not a topic. I don't know if the superintendent would like to address that now or at a different time.
Later is fine. I just wanted to know if it had come up and if you guys were discussing it with them.
No, but I could add it to topics.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens.
Thank you. Next, equity and diversity, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Blakely. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I will be providing the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee for our chair, Dennis Quisenberry III, who was not able to attend. Over the quarter, the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee has focused on reviewing our goals and continuing some of those, as well as identifying some things of interest for the upcoming year. In August, we had Rick Parkett, Director of Safety and Security, present to the committee information on training, selection, and engagement and reporting for our school resource officers. Also providing updates to the committee on the school-based threat assessment teams, which included trained administrators, teachers, school resource officers, and mental health professionals. Additionally, in August, we had Jessica Duncan, Executive Director of Student Services, present to the committee with information related to the arrests made the school district of Lee County for 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 academic years. Ms. Duncan discussed a decrease in arrests, updates to systems for reporting, and also provided the committee with information about specific incidents students were being arrested for. In September, additionally, with many as shared today, we had a review of the parliamentary procedures and board policy overview. Additionally, we recapped the EDAT activities and priorities, and the committee held a vote for new officers. Dennis Quisenberry III was chosen as chair, and myself, Chris Blakely, as vice chair during the September's meeting. October, EDAC received a presentation from a panel of face-to-face, Lee Home Connect, and Lee Virtual School administrators, teachers, and parents, as well as District Executive Director for elementary schools. Each discussed their experience with the pandemic and academics as related to the virtual and face-to-face curriculum instruction. Additionally, the committee received insight on the student experience from those with direct knowledge. And once again, that was from teachers, parents, and district officials. EDAC offered a vote of confidence from Ms. Vaughn to speak on behalf of the committee's LGBTQ+ support considerations mentioned during the meeting to ensure that all will be able to enjoy a welcoming and inclusive environment free from all forms of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. We meet November 9th, and will be our first face-to-face meeting this year to discuss some topics for our 2020-21. The committee will discuss and select topics of interest during the forthcoming meetings toward the goal of offering recommendations to the school board by the end of the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Blakely. Next, we have, last and final, we have Finance Advisory Committee, Council.
Okay, I've done this before. Hi, my name is Daryl Tavlon, chair again of the Finance. And we tried to work through COVID as much as we were allowed. So in June, Ms. Patricia introduced our new liaison, Ms. Jordan, and Ms. Leffler gave us a presentation on and answered our budgeting questions since there was an abundance of them and answered concerns. In July, Ms. Pruitt discussed options each family had for their children, whether going back to school, face-to-face, Lee Connect, or Lee Virtual. Ms. Letzler gave a little bit of a budget update. By August, we had the reopening of schools and we discussed grants, CARES dollars, and additional funding. And in September, we had our elections and more funding questions at that point. And that's about all at this point. Do you guys have any questions?
Great. All right, now, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time. Ms. Gittens, you have a question?
I just had a question on the advisory boards, and it may be to Mr. Prebruno. I'm not sure how we're doing the option of doing face-to-face or continuing with Zoom. And is that something that we need to say is a possibility and is available? And the reason I bring it up is that I have heard that in some situations they get a better attendance because people can attend or whatever. Is there anything that precludes them from continuing that?
There's nothing that, from a statutory standpoint, that precludes them from having Zoom meetings. They have been encouraged to move back to their face-to-face meetings. That's pretty much where we are at this point.
Ms. Patrica?
I have a question for Finance Advisory, and I know that's your thing, so I'm just kind of asking.
Who's here?
Well, I know he's here, but you're the liaison. So
Go to work.
I'm wondering if they will have an opportunity to view the RSM report and maybe discuss that and report back to the board what they found, number one. Number two, at our last board meeting, there was some discussion surrounding us being, quote, top-heavy. And I have since discussed that with several internal auditors, and they said that that would come up as part of any risk assessment done of the district. As we know, that didn't come up with RSM. So I'm wondering whether that's a topic we can raise with Finance Advisory, or if the board wants to go back and push RSM to take a look at that, determine why it wasn't placed on as an issue on the risk assessment, so we can just sort of put that issue to bed once and for all.
Okay, I will tell you, and Daryl will probably can attest to this, that, and I did bring that before the board, that the Finance Committee did ask to be more engaged with RSM and looking at all of that information. Do you want to speak on that for a second?
I was actually going to discuss with Kelly and Barb about adding that to our agenda as a topic so that we can dive into it further, whether it was at this up and coming November meeting or possibly the December meeting. I saw the interest from the other committee members in this when Ms. Jordan brought that up, and that was something that I was looking forward to bringing up again. That way we can dive in a little further.
Awesome, great,
Yeah, so they are definitely looking at that. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Dr. Atkins, do you want to take it from here? Or?
Well, just one comment, just so I make sure the board is aware. One of the things that we've asked the chairs to do is as you know, with the proximity-based plan, we're asking for community input. And you know, with our board advisory committees, this is another area that we think that we can get input from them as well in terms of our student proximity plan. So that'll be kind of a part of the charge.
Okay, thank you. So moving on, the next would be the executive services. I guess it's, Dr. Desimar for the district educational facility plan. Oh, and Ms. Kelly as well.
Ms. Jordan, before you move forward, I just want to remind the board that you are also working on your audit advisory committee as well, that will be looking into the RSM issues that were raised just now.
Thank you. Hello, ladies. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Atkins and members of the board. Pursuant to statute 1001.42, 1001.43, and 1013.35, the district is obligated to produce a district facilities work program and submit that report to the state after a public hearing and approval by the board. The district facilities work program or work plan is an expanded version of the capital plan that you all see each year, with additional information for years after year 5 of our capital plan. So I have here with me today Ms. Kelly Letcher, who is going to take you through the district facilities work program, the information in that, and then talk about the timeline for the public hearing and board approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, before I go into this, I'd like to thank Dominic. Gemelli is very active in helping do this with all of the enrollment projections and major pieces of it. And then one of my staff members, Melissa Rivera, who's in the back room, I don't know if you can see her, is awesome. Let me just say that. And she is all things capital in my office, and she puts a lot of time into this, especially when the state sends it at the very last minute, right before it's due, and expects it to happen like in 2 days. So the two of them really put a lot of time and effort into getting this done, and I would like to just point out that they do that. The version that is in the attachment is a draft version, just so you are aware. There are some minor, very minor adjustments coming for you on the November 17th public hearing. So they're very minor. I think there's 4 numbers in the back under student things that were changed, and that was the only change from the version that you have. Some differences that I want to talk about. So basically, the first, mimics the capital plan that was approved by you during the budget process with a couple of minor adjustments. So I just want to go over those adjustments with you so that you're aware of what those are. We re-looked at our sales tax numbers after all of the numbers started coming in, and we figured out that it wasn't as bad as we had thought it was going to be. So we have done an adjustment and increased our sales tax revenues. We will be doing a sales tax presentation for you all in the near future to talk to you about where those numbers are falling and how we revised our projections. But we revised our projections for this year. We increased it by about $18 million, which is really good, some additional dollars we can put into our schools. There were some minor adjustments in the fund balance that will be changed because of the actual numbers that came in and the finalizing of everything after the final budget was and the AFR was done and things. In the appropriations, we made some minor changes. We added some dollars for some property by Riverdale in order to build that school out some more and do some remodeling there. We moved East Elementary J up a year. We did some minor adjustments in between the maintenance projects and some security projects, moving some things into security and out of maintenance area where they better fit. And we added a little additional money into planning for some property that we're looking at. So those were minor adjustments that we made in the plan after the plan that you saw with the final budget. So I just wanted you to be aware of those changes that are in here that are not in the final budget that you approved. Just going kind of through the plan, you've seen it before. It's not, it's a lot of numbers, a lot of things, but it's basically just a breakdown of the work plan. The first 5 years is really just a breakdown of the schools that we're looking at, the information, the revenue projections and things like that. In the first 5 years, just like in our capital plan, we have 2 new elementary schools, 2 new middle schools. Gateway High School is still out there. We have the pre-K through 8 innovation school on the plan and 5 remodels and renovations that we're proposing that were in the original plan. Years 6 through 20 of the work plan really just focus on the, what it is, what schools we think we're going to need in that point. And it's really like the last 2 or 3 pages of the work plan itself. And in those years 6 through 10, we're looking at 6 new schools, 1 elementary, 2 middle, and 3 high schools. And years 11 through 20, we're looking at 17 new schools, 7 elementary, 6 middle, and 4 high schools. And you can imagine that far out, it's just kind of our best guess at this point. So these numbers will, of course, keep changing based on the student population and what's happening. So at that's really all we have to have unless you have questions.
Okay. Ms. Vaughn, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. What kind of impact do you foresee our proximity plan having on this? Because I'm thinking that some of the projections may change based on how that all plays out.
So I think really, personally, where I think it's going to come in is, the kids are the kids. The kids are going to come.
Right.
It's just really where we're going to place the schools. We're going to need the schools. It's just where they're going to be placed based on where the students and the proximity plan fall. So I really think it's more of a placement of where the schools are. We still propose we're going to need those schools.
Yeah, and I do understand that, but there may be some suggestions on, for instance, dividing us into primary schools and intermediate schools, or some of the things, if we need more land, or those kinds of things. So in other words, all these numbers are flexible enough that within 2 years, although right now we're saying we need this one, this one, this one, the numbers can transition into whatever we need based on proximity.
Yeah, and so the capital plan, as well as the budget, as you know, is always evolving. It's always changing, and we are looking at the most recent data and making adjustments on that. So nothing is set in stone. this year is pretty much, what's going to start is going to start, but beyond that, even into next year, changes will occur. It's always changing, and there's always room for change and adjustments.
Okay, I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, please.
A couple of questions. Hi, how are you? Thank you. When we talk about, the first couple of pages are showing just a whole list of schools, and you mentioned that, these are schools that we will be working with and doing things with. Is there a breakdown of the use of, and this may be Dr. Desamore, the use of sales tax monies on these different maintenance and building and all that based on district or zone?
We do have that breakdown, and this really is it groups it, and it does have it kind of laid out like that. We do have a breakdown, and when we bring the sales tax information back to you, we'll also bring to you the things that we're proposing to be paid from the sales tax at that time, so you all can see exactly what it is. But we have worked to break out what items are sales tax and what are not. And again, that's always evolving based on where our funding is. We may have something in sales tax and then get a grant in at the last minute and switch that over to the grant and then put something else into sales tax because we want to utilize the funds the best we can. So, but we will bring that forward. This plan lays out all of the items that are going to be done with the different funding sources, so it's kind of hard on this plan, but we do have that information that we can provide to you.
And when will we be receiving that?
When we bring the briefing back, plus it is on the website. So if you were to go out to the sales tax, all of the schools that are having things done are on there as well.
Well, then your
By
report,
zones?
Excuse me?
your report to the ISOC committee also includes that as well.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
And how is it, how do you prioritize? How do you say we're going to do this one first and this one second and this one third?
So basically, there's a capital committee that meets that has a lot of the stakeholders. There's security, there's information technology, facilities, budget, procurement. Who am I missing?
Academic.
I mean, basically operations, the superintendent sits in, and we go through the priorities of the district to determine what is the priority, what needs to be done within the district. And then after all of the priorities come together, then we go and start looking at funding sources to see the best utilization of the funding sources.
So where is priority of need?
I believe that they brought the information, the operations people brought the list of how the priorities are established and worked with you all to determine how we establish those priorities within the capital plan. And I'm sure we can send that information back out to you if you would like to. But
we've seen that. I have that. I guess. Go ahead. Were you?
Yeah. I just want to make sure I heard you right. You asked the priority of need. Is that what you said? Or of me? What was your question?
The bottom line is, how do you prioritize if one area, and you know where I'm going, so yes, I'm going there. If you have a priority for one part of the district and another part of the district has a project, and their project either goes first or goes at the same time or whatever, how do you prioritize to put off?
Okay, so basically all of the information, that we have from each of our different areas. So first priority would be safety and student seats. So we prioritize first needing to understand and know within our 5-year window, where do we need schools and when do we need schools? And so that is kind of the first piece of the pie to come off. And then second, based on all of the subject area experts that we have in the field in terms of analyzing needs of schools, what condition our buildings are in, what types of things need to be done at each school, and then what a rotation, a proper maintenance schedule or maintenance rotation of items at schools need to be done. Then we'll take those maintenance rotation items next to determine, all right, what rotation, what maintenance needs to happen at which schools this year, or over the 5 years really, because we're going on a 5-year capital plan, assign numbers or budget amounts to those, and then determine, all right, what funding do we have left? And based on that funding that we have left, we have a number of needs that have been determined by our folks in operations, maintenance, construction, so on, safety, and so on. And then also have information related to different items that schools themselves have requested. And then based on that list of information, laid next to the priorities that we had established, right, which came from information from the board, which comes from information from the strategic plan. Then we determine, based on that list of items that we have, how they fit into the priorities, and based on the funding that we have, what is it that we can achieve or accomplish in any one given year, given the list of projects that we have.
Okay, let me give you one little piece of information that goes along with what I'm asking. I received from Mr. Giminelli last week, he sent out a chart.
From Mr. Who, I'm sorry?
From Dominic.
Oh, from Dominic, okay, yes,
And it was showing that we are one of the lowest districts of the large districts in the state for the amount of portable or temporary seats that we have. And we were like third or fourth from the bottom. And when I looked at it, we were like at 3% of our seats are portables, which is admirable. But when you take the number of seats total that we have that fit that and do the math, it shows that 94 to 95% are in one zone.
Right, overwhelmingly, our portables are in the East Zone, yes.
So that's my question. How, if that's so overwhelmingly so, why isn't there a priority to deal with that first and get that taken care of?
Well, and I would say in our capital plan that we do have that as a priority because of all the schools within our 5-year window. They're all pretty much in the East Zone in order to try to eliminate the portable situation there. Now, it is true that the growth at one point in the area was so large as for us not to be able, with the funding that we had, to be able to keep up with the growth in the zone in order to put schools up fast enough to not have to utilize portables, which was one of the real impetus for the sales tax push, knowing that we needed additional dollars in order to sustain buildings that we needed across the district, but at the time, and still continues, especially in the East Zone, given our growth patterns. And so within the next 5 to 10 years, within the school building plan that we have, you see that mostly all of them are in the East Zone.
Well, we can discuss that. But anyway, thank you for your explanation. And the last question, on this report that goes to DOE, is this something that, and I know, Kelly, you said it's changing, how stringent is it once it goes to DOE?
Well, the plan goes to DOE every year. And we do, but I think your question is, okay, so we submit the plan to the DOE, can we then make changes or can we deviate from the plan that we submitted? Am I getting to the crux of your question?
Do we then have to report when we do that?
No.
This is just saying.
No, this is just saying at this point in time, this is what the plan was at this moment in time. There's been a public hearing on that. The board has approved that. And here is our submission at this time, in which case the 5-year plan that we have submitted to the state is sufficient and it's financially feasible, because we have to tell them not only what we plan on doing, but also our revenue sources for those, and does your district have a plan that is financially feasible. But in no way does that necessarily lock us into now next month or 6 months from now. If we wanted to make a change to that or do something different, that's fine. It follows our regular process as we typically would follow, as Ms. Letcher mentioned earlier. our budget is always an evolving process. So if there's a different project that comes on the schedule, or we determine that we're not doing something or plans somehow have changed, then we'll go through that budget change process with the board, and then that's what happens. So this report to the DOE doesn't necessarily lock us into anything. It is a requirement of the state by statute that says every year you have to submit this plan.
For this amount of time out, right?
For this amount of time out, right, but you do it every year.
Right.
So next year, the plan could look completely different based on what happens, including, changes that might take place because of things like proximity, as Ms. Vaughn mentioned earlier.
And what was the date? You said you changed the elementary J and East, and you said it was moved up a year?
What date did we change it to? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. I'm looking for that on here.
This year.
I think it's around 10 or 11.
We moved it up to start this year. Last year was our first time, but they needed some pre-money.
So is it going to open August of '23?
So I believe the original plan, we had it opening in August of '24. Now with the move up to the year, it would be opening in August of '23. Again, going back to the question that you asked earlier and trying to figure out based on all of the projects that need to be balanced and how quickly a school could be built, how quickly could we open the school to be able to alleviate, the need for seats. And so that was the drive behind that.
And I do think, one of the things that is important, she mentioned it, but it bears repeating, that, we just passed the referendum really in 2018. We were not capable of really going out and doing this level of projects without that revenue. If you look at where we were in terms of capital, our capital funding versus where we are today, this has allowed us to really accelerate our construction project to meet those needs. I mean, I think that's why we were able to make such a compelling argument. The second thing is that I've watched you've lived here for a while as well. We've watched growth patterns change. And previously, when there was a lot of growth in the district, a lot of it was in the west zone, and that's where a lot of the construction was. And then during the recession, that's when you saw this really pretty quick shift into the east zone, but that's also when our capital funding went down. Now we've got the capital funding that we need, and we're able to, I think, really be able to prioritize where those portables are that we had to put because we had to react to that shift in growth. We didn't have growth there for a little while, and then all of a sudden it picked back up. But instead of being in the west, it was in the east.
And trust me, I understand that, and I agree with what you're saying. My only concern is if during that bubble time we saw a definite need in a particular area and we didn't have the funding, when we got the funding, it would seem that would be major priority to catch up that area before we start looking at advancing other areas that don't have a similar need. That's basically what I'm saying, and thank you.
Okay, so understood. Just want to say, when you say advancing other areas, I'm not sure exactly, but there's multiple things that have to happen. Not only do we have the existing schools that we have and the need to build new ones, but we also have the existing 100 schools now in which maintenance has to continue on all of those facilities as well.
And I totally agree with that. And maintenance is one thing and building is another. So we can continue that later. Thank you.
And let me again add, and there are people on this board that were there during the time some of these decisions were made. But when we were looking at our growth patterns a few years ago, like when Dr. Graham was superintendent, I remember the presentations, and at that point, the most critical area had been in the south. So that's why that construction project was started first, because if you went back and looked at Mr. Mora's numbers when he presented to the board, you could see that is where the most need was, followed by the east zone. And we didn't have the funding to take on both projects at the same time at that point because we did not have a half-penny sales tax. So we had to prioritize. We selected Bonita Springs, and the rest is history, so to speak. And then we went as quickly as we could into the East Zone, and that's where you had Lehigh Senior Edition being built. We were also finishing up a project, remember, at Dunbar High School that was started from Dr. Burke, to also help alleviate some of the overcrowding in the East Zone. So you already had these projects that were being used to increase capacity in the east, but we needed Bonita Springs High School to address that capacity in the south.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your
Okay.
information.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to bring up Ms. Rita Davis, and she's going to give us an update as it relates to our career academies, and I know there's a lot going on. So we're excited to bring you this information.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me here today. Let me just get situated. Okay, so I have 30 minutes of your time to share a very awesome story with you, which is career and technical education status update in our district. I'm going to start with a story, a CTE work story, and then I'm going to show you a visual, which is just a roadmap of our services. I want to briefly give you an update on our Perkins grant, which is a major funding source for our programs. You also asked at the last meeting that I was at to talk about what was happening during the pandemic to support our CTE courses. So I want to give you some information about that. And then I'll go into what we're currently working on and our next steps, and then we'll conclude that we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Okay, so take a look at this visual. I tried to make the presentation as rich with images as possible because it does paint a story of career and technical education in our district. This is an email I'm going to read to you that I sent my team who is with me today. There's 10 of us, and they are sitting out in the boardroom, and they are the power behind this presentation. And this is an email I sent them at the end of September. Good morning, CTE team. Do you ever wonder, does the work I do matter? This contemplation creeps up on me from time to time, and if you let it take up residence in your brain, it can deter you from our CTE mission, preparing all students for the workforce. While getting my nails done yesterday, I met a young man named Nathan. He shared that he could only do my nails on the weekend because he's a local college student. Sensing the pride in his voice, I was intrigued, so I asked, which school? I go to FGCU, he said. I'm majoring in pre-med. I shared that I, too, am an Eagle, but it was a very long time ago. I asked if he graduated from one of our high schools. Baker, in the Cape. Do you know it? Yes, I do, I said. My team and I oversee career academies at our high schools. Oh, I was in the medical academy. It was amazing. I earned my CNA, and that helped me get a scholarship, and it's helping me in pre-med. I don't think I need to add any more details because you've probably got the same goosebumps I do. Your work matters. It matters to our children and to our community. So I start the presentation with that story. I want you to think of Nathan throughout. He's one of over 30,000 course enrollments in CTE, and he's out in our community in post-secondary education and also working. So this first visual, it starts with our teachers. This was during one of our in-service, and yes, you're gonna see a lot of pictures without masks. This is not the current school year, but it does show what we've done as a team together over the last few years. And then there's our team in the middle and center. One of our team members is unable to be here with us today. Lisa Wright, she oversees our health occupation medical academies. And then our business partners are absolutely critical in the process. There's the FRLA chapter board president at the bottom. And then, of course, our students. That's why we're here. Okay, so let's move on to our CTE roadmap. I put this together for you because I wanted to show I was honored to take on this role in 2015, and the primary focus at that time, there was just 5 of us, and the primary focus was industry certifications. We had CTE programs at all of our high schools, none of our middle schools, and none of our special centers. So we've worked as a team over the last 5 years to create a continuum of services for our students. So we start with that little tiny graphic on the right for 2020, and that's one child. And we look at every Lee County student the same way in the hopes that they will enter into some type of CTE learning that will eventually get them to the workforce, whether they go post-secondary or straight into the workforce. So we are very excited, and I'll just take you through this briefly. We are bringing services down to the elementary level. We have the Excel bus, which will be rolling in January, and that has been a pet project. Kelly Thawley and Jeremy Bailey, they're out in the audience. They now have their CDL permits, so we're very proud of them. And much gratitude to the Transportation Department for donating a bus to us to make this happen. So I'll go over that in a little more detail later and give you a sneak peek photo view of that. And then also kudos to the schools. Elementary schools, a lot of them have their own career days. That's not a district-wide endeavor. We'd like to make it so, but I do want to give out a shout out to schools that do career days on their own. Because research is showing that students should begin to think about their careers as early as 5th grade. What interests them? They don't have to sign contracts or build a resume, but what are they interested in? At the middle school level, we are really interested in them doing an aptitude and interest assessment so they can start to think about those high school career academies. We recently brought on Kelly Thawley as a career specialist. We did not have this position previously. So this has been instrumental in creating those connections with the community and bringing additional services into the classroom for our students. So we have brought industry certifications into the middle school, and we try to make them middle school appropriate, things they'll be excited about: agriculture, culinary arts, digital design. We've actually added additional coding courses over the last few years that we're excited about. Then when our children enter high school, we have over 80 career and tech ed programs in our program of study. We are working on internships. They have opportunities to do career dual enrollment, whether it's a tech college or if you're at Bonita Springs High School, we have career dual enrollment with Embry-Riddle, and we're working on adding that to Island Coast High School. We have career panels. Right now we have virtual career panels. And of course, our industry certifications is still a hallmark for us. Yes, we did go down in 2019-20 by 30%, but that is primarily based due to the pandemic. Our students are still involved in technical competitions, and we pride ourselves on work-based learning experiences. And then as we guide our students into post-graduation, we want them to go to the technical colleges, straight into the workforce, possibly the military. We love the students that create their own businesses, or they may enter one of our local colleges or state universities. So I wanted you to have a visual of the CTE roadmap so that you could see the continuum of services within our district. The next slide is about our Perkins Grant. Our Perkins Grant is our primary supplemental funding source. It's just under $1 million, and when we first started, it covered every high school, but didn't go down into the middle schools and definitely didn't touch 5th grade. It now covers all of that. And we take that, and if you average it out for the course enrollment, it comes down to about $58 per student. So we really stretch those dollars. Very, very grateful for this funding. But in order to get that funding this year, we had to go through a year-long application process. Excuse me. And that process started last July. So now we have to say that our programs that are Perkins fundable meet certain requirements called size, scope, and quality, and also they must be aligned to the labor market. Even though we have 80-plus CTE programs available to us from the Florida Department of Education, we're not able to fund all of those. Only 36 can be funded with Perkins dollars. And this is a picture of the Workforce Summit we did in January. And we did this summit as a region. Charlotte, Collier, Hendry, Glades, and Lee County met to make this happen. So this was a regional effort. We also worked with our local Workforce Development Board to complete our application. Excuse me. Okay, so Pivot Power. What's been going on in light of the pandemic to not just support CTE, but also to strengthen it? As soon as we went into quarantine, we met as a team and decided what can we do holistically to help our CTE teachers and students adjust. And we issued a district-wide soft skills curriculum that was available to all CTE students. Moving forward, the team members of CTE really got together and said, okay, how can we take face-to-face resources and make them available virtually? And as we've shared with you previously, 170 of our CTE courses were made Lee Home Connect compatible in semester 1. And we attribute that to these individuals in the audience who worked very hard to get as many CTE courses virtual ready. We offer office hours twice a week virtually to answer any questions, and we even proctored exams remotely to help teachers so that we could capture some additional certifications. And then we applied for the CTE CARES Act grant, which allows us to enhance CTE programs that we previously did not have access to. Okay, so this is coming into the fun part of us because we love to be creative. All students. Want me to address it? Mm-hmm. Do you want me to address it now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just received a question from one of the callers on the phone. No, I'm just kidding. Is the CTE pathway, the roadmap, is that available to all students? Absolutely. Our mantra is CTE for all, and I see my team nodding their head. It is very, very important. And as you'll see on our next step slide, number 4, equity and access analysis is going to be something we're going to look at in December. Basically, the demographics of our students in CTE to ensure that the access is there for all students. Does that answer the question? Yes? Okay, virtual career panels, that's new this year. Kelly Thully is working with business partners and community members to actually bring almost like career visits into the classroom. So they zoom in, students from around the district are able to ask questions and learn about different careers. We already did one on agriculture. The thing I'm really excited about is Engineering Day. That occurred this morning. So Mary Graham put that together, and she worked with several high schools. I have some stats for you. It was so awesome. I had goosebumps. 94 participants this morning. We had 70 students, 14 guest speakers, and 15 post-secondary student representatives from 3 colleges. We had over a dozen participating engineering firms and 6 high schools. And I brought this to show you, because one of the questions is, how do we adapt? So this was done virtually on Zoom. It was amazing. They had breakout rooms so they could ask questions. They were able to take a break, and instead of taking a break, they kept asking questions. They were so excited. But Mary and her team put together these bags, these swag bags that kids love and adults love too, delivered them to the schools so that students in Lee Home Connect or face-to-face could get them by this morning. There's an activity, there's all kinds of goodies, and she had Jason's Deli delivered to each of the participating schools today for the kids. So we had a virtual event with just kind of in-person touches, and it was absolutely wonderful. So that's the kind of adaptations we are making in order to keep our kids connected to the workforce, and we had teachers participating in schools. It was absolutely wonderful. So that was our Engineering Day. Brian Grenstra is heading up our career advisory boards from the district level. You know, this is a goal for Dr. Atkins and Dr. Spiro that every high school has a career advisory board. When I spoke to you last, we had 44 members, and they have been instructed or guided to have their first meeting of the year by Thanksgiving. And they will do that virtually, and then Brian is their resource at the district to help guide that. And their goal is to weigh in on, are our academies working? Are they sustainable? Have they run their course? Are there new academies that need to be added? And how can they support those academies from the business and community perspective? I just spoke about equity and access analysis. Very, very important that all students, we actually got a report back from the DOE that we do an incredible job of having non-traditional students. So girls take welding classes. You heard about Nathan taking the CNA class. So we're really good at making sure students have access to CTE. But now we want to go deeper. We want to look at our level 1s and 2 readers, our ELL students, and just make sure every child is definitely enrolled in those courses. Number 5 is, now this presentation is all about career and tech ed. We have another department, adult ed, we're just not speaking of them today, but we are doing a partnership with them. It's called Ace Your Week Podcast, and it's really to encourage adult ed students to seek employment and get their GED, but we will be highlighting CTE students and teachers in that process, so that'll be fun. And then there it is, there's the Excel bus. Excuse me. And that's the wrap, the back side of the wrap, the to be continued. There's going to be 5 kiosks inside, 3 virtual reality, 2 hands-on. We're working on the menu of services now. Kelly's done an excellent job on that, and that should be rolling around to schools in January. 5th graders will be able to get on, experience the different industries that are important, and our sponsors will have a magnet on the outside of the bus, so they get free marketing. And so we are very, very excited. And again, this will allow elementary students to start thinking about their career. Train to Gain with Southwest Florida Enterprise Center. So with these, you're going to see we are deeply connected to our community. This was something, we got a call from the city of Fort Myers. We had a meeting, and out came Train to Gain. This is going to be a program. Dunbar High is going to be the pilot. Once students have met their graduation requirements, they're going to get skills in construction trades, a very quick, rapid after-school program, and then they'll be awarded a summer internship for those that complete the program. Workforce Signing Days in partnership with Bill Dobman, and that was supposed to occur in May 2020. We've had to postpone, but we're excited to recognize students that are going directly into the workforce. We have an incredible partnership with Philip Ford and his team at Lee BIA, and we are working on an internship program with them. They also, as you know, sponsor Build My Future Lee County, and we just wrote a grant, an entrepreneurship grant with them called the Out of the Box Trailer, and we really hope we get that because that will combine entrepreneurship with construction trades, and I'll keep you posted about that. Number 11 is super exciting, and I want to give Brian Granstra specific kudos for this. Apprenticeship is the latest buzzword in the world of CTE, but everybody primarily thinks it has to do with trades. So we missed out on a grant. We applied, everybody applied, and we didn't get it. It was competitive. And Brian came back to me and said, I don't want to let this go. He said, I think we have an opportunity here, but not in the trades. He said, I think we have other units in the district that could benefit if we acted as the apprenticeship. He said, I think we can run it through adult ed, and we can train our employees. So we would be the apprenticeship. I said, Brian, that's amazing. Go research it, come back with some ideas. He did. He called DOE, and they said, absolutely. If you've got a need in IT, you can set up an apprenticeship. So that's what got the wheels going. He's met with Daryl Eldon and ISD. They're excited about it. We're grateful for the opportunity. I put pre-planning. I didn't put a date because we do love to brainstorm. But what this could do is improve the earning potential of our employees, our community, and it brings revenue back to the district because it's seat time for us. So this could be a total win-win. So we're very excited about this. Brian will be applying for the next round of grants and working with ISD on that, which we're always grateful when we can collaborate with other departments and divisions. So stay tuned for that. And then Dr. Spiro is leading up an agribusiness event on behalf of community members in Lehigh related to agriculture. So it's farm to table concept, farm to city, I believe. And it may be very similar to Build My Future. So due to our connections with Philip, we said, hey, can you get together with a couple folks and kind of give them a heads up of what it's like to be a business member sponsoring a major school function. So we've made that connection and we'll be meeting soon with them. So that may be another opportunity coming up November of 2021.
And this right here, I mean, this one we've actually got links into FGCU. Dr. Spiro and I have met with that crew, and they continue to have ongoing meetings. There's a lot of agriculture here in Southwest Florida, and I think it's kind of a lot of kids don't know a lot about it, and there's a lot of it. It's evolving quite a bit with technology, and I think that it really gives us a real opportunity to expose our students to careers that are out there that they might not otherwise think, and connect themselves also with that same department with at Florida Gulf Coast University, which we're pretty excited. We've got at least one professor involved, and some other folks in the community.
And so with that, we conclude with the Q&A slide, which wraps up the visual story of CTE. And really, it's all about building relationships, making connections to the community, and really trying to help our students be workforce ready.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, always. Are there questions, please? Ms. Patrica?
I love the district-wide requirement for career days in middle schools. I know that my own at Bonita Middle got that opportunity, but I don't think mine at Three Oaks Middle got that opportunity. And I remember the kids coming home that day being really excited. I've got one that still wants to be a cop as a result of that day. So I love the requirement piece. I think sometimes when the district says this is a priority, then it gets done. As I mentioned, I'm seeing these things that you're talking about here playing out in my children's middle school schedules. They come home and they tell me what their classes are going to be, or they sign up for their classes, and these are offerings. Sometimes they get stuck into stuff that they don't think is going to be so fun, but they end up with certifications at the end, so it's a win-win. Thank you for bringing your team. I think that's really important. I think you typically do that. And we don't always get a chance to hear from you. I love the work that you do, and I know the last time you stood right there, I urged Dr. Atkins to make sure that you have the staff necessary, because this is building bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't want it to collapse because you don't have enough staff to support the expansion of CTE. And that was more directed at Dr. Atkins, or was it you? But is the Career Signing Day the Bill Dobman initiative?
Yes, that is correct. And Kelly and I just reached out to Bill and said, hey, we want you to see the Excel bus. So we're reaching out to, we know our key sponsors, to give them first opportunity. And then also we want to start planning, whether it's virtual or in person, because he's been such an advocate on our behalf for that initiative. So yep, we asked if we could meet with him first week of December.
Perfect. And then finally, how are we doing with CTE teachers, or is that maybe more of a question for Dr. Pruitt?
In terms of their sanity or fulfilling?
In terms of being able to attract teachers with these specialized skills to be able to teach our kids.
So as you know, one of the legislative priorities that we submitted is to really have the state help us with a statewide initiative on an adjunct model, which Dr. Atkins had mentioned. A lot of folks do that at FSW or FGCU. You know, they're professionals during the day, and then they bring that expertise to the classroom at night. So we're looking at some very key, for example, our health academies are hard to staff, because that is a difficult salary to leave behind, or opportunity to make extra money. So that would be an awesome area to have an adjunct model. So we're looking at that. And really, we try to build as many resources from the team. They're very good at onboarding CTE teachers, welcoming them. They do virtual PLCs, twice weekly office hours. Those folks are in constant contact with the teachers and the admins at the school, and so they have a real pulse on what the need is. And they also constantly offering professional development in the area of industry certification. So maybe we can't always pay them the salary that equals what's out in their profession, but we can give them access to the latest industry cert training.
Awesome. Thank you for what you do. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for always advocating on our behalf in the community, because you help us form connections that help us build these relationships that ultimately come back to benefiting the students. So we appreciate that.
Ms. Morgan?
Thank you. Yes, wow. Wow. I just love your next steps. It's really exciting. A couple of questions. What is the difference, give me an example, if you would, of one of our DOE-funded programs that is not funded by Perkins?
I anticipated this question. So like I said earlier, we have 80-plus programs in our student progression plan, meaning the DOE says, here's one course or a series of course that gives course credit and FTE. Perkins is much more linked to the workforce. So some of those programs, admin, office assistant, or maybe something directed study, or I wrote down a couple of them. They may not be linked. Early childhood education, we've talked about this. It does not link, it's not labor market aligned because it's not a high wage occupation. So Perkins, from the federal level, is they want to dedicate money to 3 courses or more. This is another learning curve for us at the district. It used to be schools would use 1 course just to get the money from Perkins to provide resources to their students. But now DOE is saying, no, we want to see a completer. We don't want you taking Culinary 1, Admin Office 1, Workplace Essentials. We want you to take Culinary 1 through 3 so that you can come out ready to go into hospitality and tourism. So a lot of them are directed study. Some of them are odd, like some of the gaming and simulation ones aren't, just based on the SOC code, based on the occupation code. So computer user may be a high wage, high demand job, but that code may not be in the curriculum framework for animation and design. But TV production technology works regionally because we're in a hospitality and tourism, so it's considered entertainment. So that's what I was saying, this application took a year. We took every program and analyzed it, all 80 of them, and ran them through this Perkins test, as we call it, and then we brought it to the community in a series of meetings and said, here's the programs we think are Perkins fundable. What do you think? And then we took all of that together and put it into the application, and DOE came back and said 36 of them are fundable, which is much better than we originally thought. We thought it was going to be about 14. So,
wow.
Does that answer that, Ms. Morgan?
It does. So another question. You're working with FGCU on the agribusiness. Was there ever any connection with UCF? Is what UCF is doing different than what FGCU is doing with respect to agriculture? Have I got the right school, Dr. Adkins? UCF, the one that's out here in Immokalee?
Well, UF, we work very closely.
UF.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So like the IFAS, the extension centers, yep. So UF is a part of this, will be a part of this initiative as well. Okay. They're a part of an agriculture grant that we're applying for on behalf of Eastleigh County High School, and UF is very active in our engineering cluster. Okay. And UF had us out about 2 years ago to one of their extension centers, so they're very interested in being a part of the process. Okay. FGCU is doing just a very unique thing of combining business with agriculture, and that's why marrying those is really good. Yep.
Okay, and one more question. You've talked about your career advisory boards for each high school. Mm-hmm. Is anything being done to create for a subgroup? For example, if you've got people at various high schools who are welders, any opportunity for them as a subgroup to meet and talk about as a business what needs there are in Lee County for welding and how the welding community can support that effort in each of the high schools. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yep, so it's not just a high school academy. It might be like a district level welding. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, but that would be something we'll definitely take back. That's an excellent idea to pull those members with specific needs. Yeah. Sure, especially for construction's one of our hot industries. So that's a great idea.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you. And you are exciting, and your group is high energy, and all of you out there, I recognize some of you. Anyway, thank you. You're doing great work. I love it.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn, please.
Yes, thank you. I love all these programs, and what my first question is, do we have career exploratory at every middle school?
Yes, we have career exploratory. It's actually a requirement for middle school promotion. You must have some type of career assessment, and that was one of Kelly's first initiatives and we're doing that. We're working with curriculum and Lori Houchin and her team to make sure that no child is forgotten in that process. And then it's really cool because they ask them a series of questions, nothing too technical, and gets them thinking about various career clusters. And then we plan to bring in, and this was our plan last year before the quarantine, to go in and talk to them, okay, if you're in this zone and you had this aptitude and these interests, here are the academies in your area that you may be interested in applying for.
Okay, but is it just an assessment separate from a course, or is it an actual?
No, it is not a full course. It's part of a course. It was part of House Bill 7071 that they have to have, and it's multifaceted. It's not just an assessment. They have to know what their options are in high school. They have to know what the pathways are beyond high school. But there are specific CTE courses in middle school, and some of them lead to industry certs, like we have coding. Some lead to digital tool certificates, which we call junior certs. But this can be incorporated into any middle school course.
Okay, and I think it is a great idea. I would like to actually see it as a core course that they have to take, and it could include research component and that sort of thing. All my years in high school, what I found out from many of my students is that they really hadn't planned for what they want to do. And, some of them, and it's tough to give tough love on some of the kids, but when you have a junior or a senior that is struggling to pass, well, at that time it was FCAT, and I want to be a doctor. Okay, and as you said, the clusters, and I think a lot of kids, if you say, what do you want to do? I want to be a doctor. Okay, well, that's a tough road, and especially kids that say, well, I hate school, and that sort of thing. That's probably not a good choice, but I think there's so many kids that are just not aware of all the various medical professions, and it's the same like the agribusiness, and you say, this is really important. Well, I don't want to be a farmer, but they don't realize how scientific, anyway, you understand.
Yes, and well, you're speaking to what our core mission has been over the last few years, is so that every answer isn't, I don't know, or I want to be just A, B, or C, that there's, like Lee Health has said all along, we have IT people. We have engineers. We're not just medical professionals. So there was a time we did have Lee Health come into our middle schools and talk to them. If you want to be a nurse, you need to get algebra really early on. Math's a big part. So a lot of the things we've done are on halt, just pause right now until we get back to more face-to-face environments. And that's why we've been trying to offer more of the hybrid, virtual experience. But that's also why we thought of the Excel bus. If we can get a 10 or 11-year-old to get on there and see, Bill Dobman manufactures glass. And you might think, well, what would I do with that, that particular career? On the outset, I don't really know. But if you experience it and someone's there and they give you a brochure of, well, if you take these courses, it could lead to this amount of payment and this lifestyle, then you might, well, I'm really interested in this. So we're trying to start that at elementary with the Excel bus, and then make it more formalized but still exploratory in middle school. And then high school, we almost want to lock them in because it helps with our funding, but then we also almost guarantee them a better resume once they graduate.
Well, and that was part of my point, that if they know they're interested in going a particular direction, they need to be enrolling in some of these classes. As you said, if you're going to do anything in science, medicine, any of those, you better be taking higher level math and science, because that's what you need to prepare for. And And so, yeah, I think all of these are wonderful, and just kind of to piggyback over what you said about the young man who was working his way by doing nails. My older daughter, when she was in high school, she hated school at the time. And in Texas, she went through a course and got a license, so she graduated with a license free, except for the fees. And then she decided, no, I'm going to go to college. And she went to college and did very well. And because she had a career, she had a talent, she didn't have to be, doing some of the lower paying jobs. She made really good. So I think that's probably another thing that to emphasize, because some of the kids go, oh, this is not for me, I'm going to college. But if they graduate with a viable skill, they can use that skill and they can work a little higher paying jobs. So I love all these programs, so thank you.
Yeah, and that's another great example, because those skills can't be taken from you, right? So in a time when you have to be agile, the economy goes up or down. Hey, I got certified in high school to be a CNA or a nail tech, and now I'm employable. So that's another excellent example.
And she, for years until the kids got older, never had to pay for a haircut for the kids, even though she was working a professional job. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Good points there. Ms. Gittens?
So question, do we have nail techs at the training, or do we at the tech centers? I know it's not at the high schools, right?
We don't at the high schools. It's very interesting. When we first started, there was such an interest in nail tech. We called it Nails and Nachos. That was in 2015. That was a goal, to put culinary and nail tech into more of our high schools, because the kids were most excited about those two. But there are some state regulations about that, just an age requirement. I know they have cosmetology and barbering at the tech colleges, but I don't believe they have nail tech currently.
No, they don't. And I know when I was teaching at East, there was myself and another group of teachers were trying very desperately to get that as one of the technology things at East. And I do understand there's the issue of the chemicals
and the age,
all that type of thing. So, but that was one of the reasons that I had talked about a long time ago, about having an off-site place that if they could do at school to do the technical part of it, and then work in an off-site place to even do the barbering and the nails. And there were so many kids that when we even brought it up, they were just, oh yeah, they were wanting to sign petitions, and it's something that they want to do. So maybe there's some way we can figure that out in the future.
Yes, we love that idea. That's been around for five years. So, and it combines entrepreneurship.
It definitely,
and
that and barbering too,
Yep.
because we used to talk to the kids about, starting your own. There's this one young man that he cut hair in his garage. And I tell you, the styles that kids would come to school, well, who did that? David did. I'm like, wow, you've already got your ticket. So another question on the farm to table. At one point, I had gotten a call, I think it was Mr. Thompson, and from the Chamber of Commerce in Lehigh. Is this the same program? Because he had called and asked about it, and was asking what schools had farming and all that. So I think I put him in touch with somebody to go forward with it. And the interesting thing about it when we were discussing it is that it did involve other counties. And is that still a part of it through the chamber, that there was a group of counties that were working together on it?
Yes.
Okay.
And we try to take a regional perspective in CTE and adult ed. We work very closely with the Workforce Development Board and Career Source, our colleagues in Collier and Charlotte, even out to Hendry and Glades. because this is our region, right? And it impacts the economic sustainability, what our students do here and what they do at surrounding counties. So we're always open to including other counties in our activities.
Yeah, I figured it would take off. It was a very good idea. A question, one before my last one, back to the nail tech thing. Is it possible to do like an internship with some of the businesses, maybe a beauty shop or something, not a full nail salon because they probably couldn't get in there. But if if a beautician wanted to add that, is it possible to have the interns come in to learn to do those things and, possibly work towards getting their licensing that way?
Yes, because just like with what we talked about with Lee Health, there's other aspects to running a salon, correct? Right. So from the hospitality and tourism perspective, you've got front desk management and you've got supervisory and just the operations of the salon. So and Kelly, again, having the career specialist position, and this speaks to what Ms. Patrica shared earlier, we just recently, I think it's been just over a year that we've had this position. And this has opened so many doors for our students, and it's taken some of the responsibility of making these community connections. Not that that's a burden, it's a blessing, but it's allowed it to happen more freely. So she's very embedded in the community with our chambers, with our organizations, and so she hears about these opportunities, and we're working on a formalized way to get that to the students more efficiently. But yes, that's what we want. We want our students in the workforce to build their resume, to build their economic situation, but also to build our community. We want them to stay.
Exactly. My last question is, and this may be to the superintendent, where are we on the progressing with the tech center in the East Zone?
It's one of the parts of the work plan that the Capital Committee talks about. So we're starting out with the expansion of Fort Myers Technical College. So those plans are already underway. And then that will be followed by the expansion at Cape Coral. And then I don't know if Mr. or Dr. Savage can give me a date for the expansion in the East Zone, but I think that's part of the 10-year work plan. That's not in the 5-year, but it's in the 10.
Good afternoon. It's in part of the second 5 years of the 10-year plan. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wang, you have one more question?
Yeah, in response to that, I think I brought this up at another meeting, but if it's one of the colleges, they have to be dual enrolled, do they not? They can't, it's not like the academies where they're a high school student and they can go to the academy. And I understand that the tech centers, let's say if you enroll in, I don't know, some construction trade, it's going to be a higher level, but doesn't that limit, what we're talking about is helping, Ms. Gittens referred to this, the economic levels of our kids. Some of the kids, they have to help out at home or they're saving for college or trade school or whatever. And that really, if that's their only option, some of them just aren't going to qualify to be dual enrolled or don't have the time in their schedule to be dual enrolled. And by the way, on the nail tech thing, I don't know what it is in Florida, but in Texas, when you got your cosmetology license, you also had a license to do like manicures. And I noticed in my salon, there's some of the people that if you're getting the chemicals and, acrylic nails or something, they can't do it. Mm-hmm. And that's probably a leg up on it, and there's such a need. I would just like to see a lot of things. It is planning for their future when they can get a well-paying job
So your question, as I'm hearing it, is two parts.
Two parts.
Let me start with the nail salon first.
Yeah.
Absolute need. So this is what's going on with early childhood education. We need, even birth to age 3, we need people more, teachers more. The wage is not there. And that's a big debate. And we're working with the future makers right now, and we will be to see if we can do a policy change statewide, right? Because you say, well, we'll increase the salary, and then parents are saying, I can't afford for that salary increase to be passed down to me. So it's just a cycle. Similar with nail tech. If it's not on that high wage, high salary, if that code is not on there, then I'm not permitted to use federal to state funds, the Perkins funds. Now, if we can find other grants, like we're doing with entrepreneurship, if we win that, if we're awarded that $100,000 entrepreneurship grant, then we'll be able to do like a competition and support construction trade. So we look for those pockets of opportunity, but that particular curriculum framework or something associated because of the salary. So that does go back to policy issues. So that's not off the table, but I just wanted you to know that sometimes we get amazing ideas from the community to create an academy, and we have to say, we love that idea too. We just don't have the federal to state funds to fund it. And we hate to say no, but just wanted you to know that particular reason why. Because I would love a nail tech program, and I know our students would too. The second question is related to, what about our students at the tech colleges? So what we've tried to do over the last several years is because of that issue. Those tech colleges are small. They only have a certain capacity, and they're designed for adult learners. If I get my GED or I graduate high school and I want to go directly into a trade, because when I was in high school here, we didn't have career academies. We had to go to Levo Tech, it was called at the time, or Cape Coral Tech. That was the only option. So what we've done as a district is try to replicate as many of those programs as possible at as many high schools as possible, so that those very students you speak of that are helping to support their families can get their high school graduation requirements done and get industry certified before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the dual enrollment piece, we have an articulation agreement with the technical colleges, but remember, they only have so many spaces. So what we're trying to do and what we've been trying to do is take those programs and bring them to our high schools, because we have a transportation issue, right? We're just so big. And to make that as much as possible on our high school campuses. And career dual enrollment allows for a lower GPA, a little bit less academic rigor than if I was dual enrolling at a 4-year college. So that is not as much of an issue. It's really literally how many seats do we have to offer our adults versus our high school students.
But the students would still have to provide their own transportation, wouldn't they?
That's correct. At this time.
And that becomes a stumbling block as well, that there can't be just a bus twice a day at a high school. And, some of the students are in the morning doing their core academic classes, and then the afternoon they travel to a vocational, a CTE class, and vice versa. The same bus will bring back. So, and we talk about equity, and I realize it's open to everyone, but in reality, there are a lot of students that it's not open to because they just don't have a way to get there. So I think that really needs to be considered.
Well, and that's why if you look at the programs, go to the websites of FMTC and CCTC, and we'd be happy to share our programs throughout the district. You'll see it's replicated almost entirely. Turbine, there's like one, they're like the only one in the state. That's not going to happen. Turbine maintenance program. But CNA, we're allowed to, get students certified in that. We have not electrical, but the welding. We have that. Automotive.
But not every school has.
No, we tried to make it one per zone, the more expensive ones to implement.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to yes, Ms. Giovanelli hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet, so I want to make sure that she does. And she had her hand up, and I know we're over about 15 minutes as well. So Ms. Giovanelli, please ask your questions, please.
Thank you. So a couple things. The Dunbar Community School program that's during the summer,
where does that fall in this? Because that's kind of an internship as well. I know the funding's a little different, but it still would be, I would think would have fallen in some of this, assisting students, the one that Mr. Eady
She's
runs.
talking about SOS.
Right, SOS. Yeah, SOS, thank you. Because it's not on here, and I was just curious.
No, because our internships are linked to career and tech ed courses. So we are only allowed to fund opportunities for students that are enrolled in a career and tech ed course. And I believe that program occurs regardless of your enrollment.
That's correct, Ms. Giovanelli.
Right, so,
Yes, ma'am.
go ahead.
For the program, there is connection and partnership with Rita now that Kelly is on board to have more intentionality between the relationship and the programs. But right now, there is no barrier as what Rita was referring to for the program that we provide as a supplement enrichment for the students.
Right, well, I wouldn't want it to be a barrier, I would want it to enhance, because you would have especially with the career advisory boards, I would think that that would only increase our summer program with maybe more businesses for interning and that kind of thing. Once we get away from COVID and back to the classroom, especially for the summer, that opportunity wasn't available this summer. But I was thinking that somehow this would be able to enhance each other, kind of, and you know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you. And, we had that partnership. Rita actually had a chance to come out and visit, I believe it was the summer prior to.
Yep.
And then with the transition with Kelly coming from the foundation. So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and then my other concern was regarding the career advisory boards, making sure that they're equitable in all schools, because I know that some schools have a difficulty even getting booster attendance and having a booster club and the support in that. So that would be my concern, is that it would be equitable even compared, for even the west and the east zones, because, most of our businesses are in south, really reality of it all. So I think that would be my concern. I would want to make sure that, I love the idea that you're taking it to the level at the schools, but I still think that they need to collaborate with everyone, and maybe some of those businesses would participate in more than one school, I guess, is really where I'm going with that. We would want to.
And that's an excellent idea. That's how we opened it up. So when this idea first came about, when Dr. Atkins and Dr. Spiro said, look, we got an opportunity here because we are growing so rapidly to really come up with a standardized system to help not only support but evaluate our academies. And the key, our community members, our parents, our students that are in the classes, our teachers. We can't, the 10 of us, unfortunately, can't manage that to the depth and quality for which it needs to be managed. So our first initial invitation, we all got together, and everybody's name and email that we had, it was a massive communication that went out to chambers, people, and I think I'd mentioned this at the last meeting, if anyone had ever handed me a card, they got dumped into this email of like, here's an opportunity, and it was an online Google form, and we had some people select multiple schools. So they had the opportunity, and some said, well, what if I'm not a welder, but I really like South Fort Myers High, I feel connected to it. Absolutely, because you may bring business ownership into it, right? So it's definitely available, and we understand what you're saying about equity and membership, and that'll be part of Brian's role. This is in the infancy stages. Like we said, we had the one big virtual meeting right before we went into quarantine. And now Brian's taking the lead so that schools don't feel alone in the process, they feel supported. But we also want high schools to take advantage to reach out to their parents and say, hey, I know you have this, small business, and we're starting an entrepreneurship academy. Would you like to come talk to our kids? You already have a connection. So for them to foster their own relationships for the purpose of their academies as well.
Yeah, that's great, because that's just a concern that I have. I want to make sure that opportunity is everywhere, so that's good. And I don't see anything in it. Back when I went to school, it was called Shadow Day instead of interning, and we were able to go and shadow someone for a day. And I would like to see maybe something like that evolve, and maybe with some of the career advisory boards, because just attending something for a day, they may like it, and they might say, oh, no way, I'm glad I did that, and I'm not going back there to. So that's just something else I I thought I'd throw out there, and that's it. And I don't see real estate on here, so I'm curious about that.
Okay, so real estate. There is a curriculum framework associated. We did some research on real estate. There's an age requirement, as you know. You have to be 18, but we do have some medical academies where you have to be 18. So we bring them along the process, and then after they turn 18, also our firefighting academy. So we would not let that be a deterrent. There's an industry cert. Another thing, this brings up a great question. When we implement a new career academy, we look at the whole Perkins test, and one piece of that is there an industry cert that you can tie to this curriculum framework? That is not dictated by DOE. We do our own analysis and research because that brings dollars back to the teacher, the school, and the district. It's called the CAPE funded list. And so there is a property manager industry certification that is on the list. So that could be, it is very much a possibility. And that particular academy is a lot less expensive to implement than, say, an automotive academy or welding where you need heavy equipment. So as part of a career advisory board, that would be a great place to start to brainstorm that. And then what we do as part of the equity process, January, February, we send out a form to schools to say, what equipments and needs do you have for the next year? Are there any new academies you want to implement? Because remember I said $58 per enrollment. We have to make that money stretch. So then we evaluate it, we see which schools are higher need, and then that's basically how it shakes out. And then of course, if the school already has a teacher in mind, that helps as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Queen, do you have one more question? And we have to move
Yes,
on.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn had brought up something, and also Ms. Giovanelli, that brought a question. The East Zone has you mentioned before that the tech academies are basically, not basically, but would help the demographic that has not the highest achievement level, and et cetera, et cetera. And with only 2 locations in Fort Myers and the Cape, that means that in the East Zone, those students have to travel to one of those 2. And when you look at equity, if the largest amount of students that fit that mold are in one area, I still am not understanding why then you would expand the other 2 areas before you would look at building a 3rd in the East Zone. And with transportation being what it is, and our students having to travel to those locations and being the ones that are the most in need for those types of things, I'm not sure how that decision was made. An example would be at Gateway High School. They're going to have veterinary services there. And in the Cape, they have the small animal academy. So to me, that would be, and I know when I went out there to visit about a year ago at the Cape, they were talking about expanding. And we also talked about the students in the East Zone that, some of them, they grow up on farms and that's their life. And having that availability for them out there is seriously a career. But they have to travel to the Cape to do it. So, I love the programs and all that you're doing. I'm just wondering how it is equitable for those programs to only be in certain areas and you're going to expand before you provide the services to students that are more in need of it.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
I
start.
guess on that as well.
So the veterinary assisting, you actually bring up an excellent point. So they have a 2 to 3 enrollment wait cycle in the Cape. So our process is very multifaceted to bring an academy, especially to a new high school. The veterinary assisting came about because we said, well, we don't have one in the East Zone. It is so incredibly popular and there's a market need. So there's a labor market alignment. So that again it couldn't be placed at Fort Myers Tech. We had the opportunity to bring it into a high school environment, and we're also working with student enrollment on career academy waivers. So let's say I get assigned to a non-Gateway high school or a school that doesn't have veterinary assisting. I can petition student enrollment and say, I would like to be a part of this veterinary assisting program because, and then there is a waiver process, just like we have waiver processes for other situations in student enrollment, to try and to, I guess, mitigate the issue that we can't afford to have every academy at every high school, but we're trying to have the ones that the market demands and the students desire at one high school in each zone. Now, speaking to the other part with the tech colleges, it really is two separate things, because although there is a pathway and a dual enrollment into the tech colleges, a lot of the things they offer, we offer at the high schools because of space. And I will say, although I don't oversee the tech colleges, I believe FMTC, it's like the 60s. I mean, it's a very old building. So there are some safety and security things that need to be taken care of long before any new building is built, just so they can continue safely operating their programs. And so that's why they're expanding, and also an expansion at Cape Tech, because they're the only technical college in the city, and then moving into the full construction.
So in terms of some of the prioritization of that, the safety was certainly a piece of it. When Dr. Spiro and I toured that facility, if you look at the place where they're doing welding as an example, really was not up to safety standards that you'd even get at South High. So, that's kind of low-hanging fruit for us, because you have the ability to go into a facility, expand an existing facility, and bring it up to standard much faster than you could actually build a construction project. So that's where the decision came to start with the Fort Myers Technical College expansion, but then also utilize Fort Myers Technical College and that particular site and credential to allow us to expand more quickly into the East Zone, because if you literally if you recreate one total recreation, it takes even more time. So in order to just expand that footprint into the East Zone will allow us to, I think, move that project up much more rapidly. The other thing is that, as you heard Dr. Desamore say, I think when it comes to the 5-year and the 10-year plan, it starts to get more fluid. And certainly, that's when we talked about the Big Five, for example, we talked about expansion of the technical college. That's something we've talked about with the board. But if the board, wants to really adjust some of the priorities in terms of some of these projects, particularly one like that, I think that is something that we're absolutely open to discussion, because that, again, as you get out in that 5-year, 10-year plan, you do have some flexibility.
And I thank you for that, and I will bring it back up to the board, I guess, at the appropriate time, because 10 years just seems like it's just, we're talking a whole career of a child getting out of school, and that's starting in school right now, and they will not have the opportunity to partake in that. And I know I hammer on it because I am just very concerned about that demographic of students that don't have the same opportunities. And that's my whole thing, is to make sure when we talk about educating all students, then all means all, and opportunities mean the same opportunities whether you live here or there or somewhere else, and especially with transportation. So I'll be bringing that up, but thank you for the explanation.
Rita, I just have one question real quick. Is the age of the people who go to the technical schools are usually out of school already, correct?
In the majority, yes, because it's designed, it's called post-secondary adult vocational, so it's PSAV. They're clock hour programs, but they're very similar. So they have a totally different set of curriculum frameworks. I guess that's what I'm trying to communicate is.
Right, that's what I was trying to
We've got a lot of what they have already happening in our high schools, and when we do implement them, we think about equity, we think about location, we think about demographics, labor market alignment, student interest, and then do we have the instructor to actually teach it. So Yes, and even with an expansion, remember the technical colleges, and I don't want to use the term revenue, it's not about making money, but sustainability, financial sustainability is from adults receiving federal aid or paying for those programs to sustain. So we have to take a look at that ratio of how many adults to high school students are in those seats.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for allowing us to go over the 30 minutes. And I apologize to the people who are next for that. But we appreciate you being here, as always.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Then we'll, if it's all right, we'll just go ahead and move on. We've got the Florida Department of Education, Commissioner of Education, African American History Task Force. I know Mr. Kay is here, Matt Kay, Jared Eady, and Rebecca Savage will be presenting. And Crystal, are you coming? All right. You should have it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. My name is Matthew Kay, and I'm joined here with Rebecca Savage, Jared Eady, and Crystal Torres Nunez, and we're here to present on the Florida DOE Commissioner of Education's African American History Task Force. And this has been a collaborative effort with the state DOE, and we've been working on improving our instructional opportunities and some of our professional development opportunities. And we're now ready to present to the board of our status and our work, and then present to you our plan to move forward from here. And before we get into the presentation, I just want to take a minute to recognize the members of our district who have contributed to this so far. This is a composite effort from our organization. It's including members from academic services, human resources, executive services, and school sites. Some of them are here today, some of them are in classrooms right now teaching. So I just want to make sure they got their recognition as well. Rebecca's going to start first by taking a look at the task force from the DOE.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Savage. I'm the Secondary English Language Arts Coordinator, and I'm really excited to share some information with you about the Commissioner's Task Force for the African American History designation. So our team, which is a professional learning community that focuses on multicultural and diversity issues. We are cross-departmental, and we came together earlier this year, and we've been meeting monthly. And one of our goals is to achieve exemplary status for our school district in the area of the African American History Task Force state designation. And we, this summer, several of our task force members actually met digitally, and we attended a conference, a digital conference that is hosted by the AAHTF at the state level, along with multiple districts. There are several districts who have achieved this status that you can see up on the screen there, some of our larger like-sized districts, and then there are a few districts at the bottom that are nearing exemplary status. We are hoping to add ourselves to that list in order to achieve exemplary status. Several of our task force members have actually worked with and met with representatives from the other districts that are listed there that have achieved this status, as well as state representatives from the task force who were able to guide us in our work. And so we're very proud of that. And one of our elements, you'll see on the next slide, is the first of 6 aspects that we are working towards. These are the designation domains, so to speak. Our first one is school board approval of the African American History Initiative. And so that's what we're here to share with you today. We're really just looking for your support in our attainment of this exemplary status. There are 5 elements or sub-elements below this area that we as a multicultural and diversity professional learning community have cross-departmentally throughout our school district actually broken down into subcommittees in order to address and support the elements of these domains that contribute to the exemplary status. So I will let our team members share the first element with you.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Crystal Torres Nunez. I'm your diversity and inclusion coach. The first area that we focused on was structured professional development. Currently, we have established within our department our culturally relevant pedagogy amongst other professional development opportunities focused towards culture and the nuances there within. We also have had our social studies department heads trained by the African Network of Southwest Florida. And currently we are looking at growth areas to include strategies for teaching the African American history trainings, focus on multicultural education and more culturally relevant teaching, leading and learning opportunities for high school African American courses, as well as leadership workshops for principals and assistant principals in regards in implementation for the curriculum.
Our second area, you'll see in that the second, going down those arrows, the second arrow deals with African American Studies curriculum and infusion in a cross-curricular way. So as the secondary language arts coordinator, I worked with my team, and we also worked with elementary and our team because Dr. K is our secondary social studies coordinator. We were able to work across curriculum in order to identify areas where African American history is currently taught. We worked with our publishers, and for the first kind of unofficial audit, I helped perform for the secondary language arts curriculum to find the areas where we would be able to highlight the instruction of African American history throughout our curriculum, and we were happy to find that it did exist across our curriculum, at least for the secondary, and then we worked with elementary as well for language arts, and we were able to identify that and actually map it out as an artifact to support our exemplary status as a school district.
Okay, and then in our third column, the teaching of the African American history curriculum, we are looking there at the more concrete and explicit instruction of the state elective course, African American history. It's currently taught in 5 of our 15 high schools. One of those high schools being Gateway, which only teaches to 9th graders this time, so that wouldn't be applicable for that grade level. And because it is already in some of our high schools, we have a great body of teachers who have already started working on that. We've incorporated some of them in our planning, and we have put our efforts behind this course with the development of a scope and sequence within curriculum and instruction. A scope and sequence is a more codified progression of how the standards of a course fit together. It's more than just a list of the benchmarks, but rather instructors coming together and saying sequentially this is how they are best aligned, and here's some support materials for them. Growing and moving forward, we're going to be working with the state DOE and the task force to help identify some really good best practice resources and some training specific for that course. So that would be our efforts behind that column.
Good afternoon, board members, Ms. Jordan, Dr. Atkins, Jared Eady, Diversity and Inclusion. This conversation is an important conversation as it relates to university partnerships and collaborations. Dr. Christopher Blakely appeared today on behalf of Mr. Quisenberry, who's the chair of our EDAC committee. Dr. Blakely is the Director of Multicultural and Leadership Development at Florida Gulf Coast University. So we already have that by virtue of him being appointed by this body to be a part of our advisory committee, an initial road and step toward that goal. Thanks toward the leadership of Dr. Blakely, I did attend a meeting about 2 weeks ago with the Provost's office from FGCU, who has pledged his full support in his current capacity prior to the transition to their new provost to support district partnerships and initiatives. Through that goal, myself and Dr. K met this summer with parts of the university's education department to talk about possible collaborations between the College of Education students coming in and being able to practice some of their research development as it relates to establishing lesson plan development from the social studies level, and then infusing some local history. And so that takes us to our very last section, local community partnerships and connections. I'm not sure if they're all up now, but out in the hallway, there are some pictures and a great historical overview of our district throughout the years. As an impetus of the conversation, I did work with the Lee County Black History Society to make sure that the pictures that were in the hallway were actually historically accurate for the schools, African-American schools that were depicted. So if you notice, before you leave, to our board members who represent the Boca Grande community, historical fact that's been lost to the annals of history is the fact that there was a school for African-American students out in Boca Grande. So we were able to put that in the lobby area, as well as about 4 additional pictures that will be coming very soon if they're not already up. So to ensure, as we tell the story, it's an accurate depiction of, one, the local community. So that leads us to the Lee County Black History Society. The board, under the leadership of Mr. Charles Barnes, has sent their full level of support. Mr. K did engage with the organization to let them know that we're considering trying to start the process and seeing where we are and how can we, of course, improve. I know that the pursuit of this designation is not a balm, and it is not saying that we have arrived and we have this exemplary, wonderful teaching plan and curriculum already in place, but what we're saying, we're starting the conversation to see where we are, and then how can we move forward to have the framework established. For me, a great historical perspective is to ensure that the resources that are available from the local level is infused as resource development for the standalone electives, as well as resource available for across the continuum of the curriculum K-12. Toward that goal is making sure that local history is approachable, applicable, and accessible to our teachers and our students. So the Lee County Black History Society has been very supportive and opened up their building for resources moving forward. Toward that goal, there'll be additional opportunities, hopefully, to have additional teachers on the site to use the research archives and collections to make sure that there's a balanced perspective from the historical level locally, starting with the Historical Society, and then, of course, moving on to our other community groups and engaging our EDAC committee. The EDAC committee has not established their focus areas or topics of interest to date. That is their conversation for next week, a part of their survey, but I know that will be something that they're very interested in, and our board liaison and the committee chair did have a conversation to talk about that in their last planning meeting. So that is our perspective from the partnership level.
Okay. So looking specifically at the elective course, African American History, that is a state DOE course. Benchmarks and standards are available through CPALMS. And it's currently offered in 5 of our 15 high schools. It is an elective course. It's a semester-long course. And so students are choosing, or participation at schools is based on student choice. And we're being responsive to those schools and the interests of those students. So this is a good example of schools and students expressing interest organically, and us trying to throw our weight and talents behind supporting those schools and those students as they seek this as well. Our expansion for the course would be our curriculum support and professional development support. So we would look just like our U.S. history and civics courses to supply that with quarterly leading and learning, where the teachers get together and we have a professional development for those teachers led by those teachers who are experts in that course. The development of curriculum maps and instructional supports, weekly updates from a teacher who is interested in taking the lead on that and who has taught the course, and professional development opportunities facilitated between curriculum and instruction, as well as diversity and inclusion and the Office of Professional Development. We also are ensuring that we're aligned with state and local policy. So state policy includes Florida Statute 1003.42, which defines required instruction in all schools. And while that's a rather extensive statute list, one part of it, H, defines clearly the teaching of African American history in Florida schools. And so we are, in our efforts, we are certainly trying to go well beyond compliance and into fidelity and being a leader among the state and how we plan for this. But just to point out that these are state-backed policies as well.
And in coordination with the district policies and alignments in the strategic plan, we're looking at 3.04 subsection 4, the accommodation of diversity. The Diversity and Inclusion Department is working with academic services to ensure that we're implementing this initiative with fidelity across the broad spectrums that we're working with.
It's also, one final aspect of it is it's responsive to our district's strategic initiatives, our ESSA targets, our ESSA goals, and making real rich efforts to supply diversity throughout our curriculum K-12.
And then this is just a summary of our next steps. So we'll be reconvening with our task force. We've been meeting just about monthly, and we'll continue the development of the African American history curriculum supports. Also reinforcing any gaps in our application or plans as needed, with a timeline goal of seeking our exemplary status distinction by May of 2021. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Okay, I have 3 questions. I'm going to give them all 3, and then I'll just listen. Okay. So the first one is, how does this curriculum that you're working on align with what has been taught with the 5 high schools previously? That's number 1. And also, since it's an elective, how has the enrollment been to this point with those 5 schools? And finally, a suggestion to the board that we participate in the Structural Development Leadership Workshop as a board exercise so that we can learn and understand and know what's being taught in our schools.
So I'll address the first 2, and then let Jarrett and Crystal address the other one. Regarding the alignment to the course that's already in our schools, this is in no way adjusting the course by any means. It's supporting, it's enriching. So the course is a state-defined course, and we can't venture, nor would we want to venture, beyond the standards that are prescribed. We're just looking to throw our full weight and talent behind supporting that course and making sure that it gets the district-level support it needs to grow. The existence of the course in our schools right now is a product of organic student interest. We always want to be responsive to that, so we just want to support that course, the teachers who are teaching it, make sure that they have opportunities to develop their craft and their curriculum materials, and we do hope and believe that through that intentional support, it will naturally grow as well in interest across other schools as well.
So the curriculum that we have been doing is pretty much already aligned to help us seek that exemplary status distinction.
Yes, ma'am. That's right up there. That's the curriculum from the state, the standards. That's basically the definition of the course.
Thank you.
I mean, Ms. Gittens, a part of your second question, what is the new inclusion, what's not currently in the curriculum? A lot of it is the intentional review of Florida and local history. It's important to understand things like the presence of the African experience and the establishment of the state and establishment of the Florida Territory, and then also having the conceptual understanding of things like Reconstruction and the Civil War, working on instructional support so that our students know that there was a Civil War battle here, the Battle of Fort Myers in 1865, that was manned and staffed by a regiment of African American soldiers. It is important to note that at one point the census record did designate that there were slaves residing here in our local community. It is important to note that people who were part of the Reconstruction Initiative lived here in Southwest Florida, serving as Postmaster General, and then also understanding how our local history fit into the lexicon of America's history. So for the kids to see that if I'm moving past and understanding the contributions of things in the 1930s related to the Jazz Age, well, I can understand that the Lee County Fort Myers community also have places like McCollum Hall. I found as a social studies teacher it's important for students to really understand the conceptual part of social studies, but then understand how it applies to them where they live and where they are in life. So a lot of in addition, Ms. Gittens, a lot of the information that's not currently provided in CPOMs explicitly that says local history, but going through vetted opportunities through local archives and primary sources and saying, here's some historical information. So you talked about Brown versus Board in 1964, but is there conceptual understanding of Blaylock by 1965 and 1969. So those are the important elements of making sure that that information is included with the teachers who are part of it, and also the intentional connection with the Lee County Black History Society. Along that goal, the society has also started to donate instructional materials of support that have been vetted. So example, the Florida Humanities Council did produce a brochure of walking tour areas across the local community with partnership with the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Fort Myers. The Black History Society has gifted that to be provided to the current elective teachers who have it. And then we're in conversation of having purchased copies of Dr. Maxine Jones's book about African Americans in Florida. So those are the curriculum elements for addition.
Just to Jared's point exactly, and Ms. Gittens, your question, the standards, for example, include something along the lines of students will examine local issues as it relates to Florida history. What Jared is saying is, rather than simply define that, we are going to throw our support behind equipping teachers so they can really authentically teach that in conjunction with our local community members, such as the Lee County Black History Society.
And can I just say on that, you know, we always look at the achievement gap and what we can do to, you know, lessen it. And I think the recognition of a particular demographic in our schools would help to give them the pride and feeling of participation and being a part of, you know, the whole. And that's why I think this is really a wonderful thing. So,
To your question about enrollment in the schools currently, currently we have 93 students. With that in mind, it is a one-semester course. So some schools choose to offer it in fall, some schools offer it in spring. So over the course of the year, I'm going to speculate here, but around 150 is a ballpark number for that. Okay.
And I did participate in that a couple of years at Dunbar High. Very, very good class. Excellent. And then finally, the one about the board participating, and I know I'd present that to the rest of the board to do, but I think it would be an excellent opportunity. And is it something, Jared, that we could...
Just a second, Ms. Gittens, Ms. Dupree.
She can finish. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm done. That was my last.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that House Bill 1213 that was signed by the governor in July of 2020 has a very specific requirement that does need to be added to the African American history instruction, which is the 1920 OCOEE. I don't know if it's OCOE.
It's a COE.
OCOE Election Day riots, and that's very specific and it is required. So I just want to make sure you guys know that.
We are that's one of the benefits of having a partnership with the task force from the state, is being able to stay on the cutting edge of that type of legislation. And we actually submitted a proposal for instructional materials that we would develop if, you know, it's an ongoing process, but the state may choose us, which would be an exciting opportunity to contribute to the state from Lee County. But yes, thank you for that. We are aware and stay on top of that.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Gittens, I thought that she was going to ask something that was going to help you. What was the question? What was it? So I can write it down.
I think he has it.
Do you mind restating it for me, Ms. Gittens?
Basically, I was just talking about, there was one section where was it? In the blue dots. The first one under structured professional development, and it says leadership workshops for principals, assistant principals of curriculum. And I wanted to suggest that we have for the board, even if it's an abbreviated or whatever, but an opportunity to see what that really is. Because as a board member, I find the more that I know, the more I'm able to field questions and thoughts that people have in the community. And I just think that would be an excellent thing. It's up to the board to decide. But if they decide not to, is it possible to perhaps join into one of them?
Sure, Ms. Gittens, from my perspective, we'll always be supportive of that, very similar to the portions of the diversity training and conversations that the board did about a year and a half ago, was in alignment with what the principals received. So I would personally be supportive of that, and then providing whatever modifications would be necessary to have you understand the front load and information of what's being provided to the principals within time constraints and, of course, permissibility due to your meeting regulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then that way that will solve will be able to be invited, and whoever wants to go would be able to do so then. Thank you,
So-
Mr. Reedy.
But I was going to suggest and ask if the board, and that this may not be the appropriate time, to ask if the board has any interest in us having perhaps, what is the length of time for a workshop or a training?
So from that vantage point, we have not built the actual part of that planning yet. So we wanted to make sure that the board was aware that we were having these conversations from a PLC standpoint, and then moving forward before we had delineated any time, dates, or descriptions, and also making sure that we had an opportunity to engage the EDAC committee, Ms. Gittin. So we're very tentative into the specifics of some of those trainings, but feel free to give us any suggestions as we build it out about some things that you think that would be worthwhile to understand and have conversations as it relates to the curriculum and then all the frameworks that are connected to it.
I guess, Ms. Reedy, if you would just, when you do come, when you do figure out what you're going to do,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
you would just let us know at that time, and then perhaps we could have that conversation of seeing it after you've done whatever you need to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica?
This question might be insensitive or convey ignorance, but I'm not clear on why we have a special course for this and why this is not embedded in history that we teach every kid that goes through our system. It seems like 150 kids is not enough.
So the course is, just like any other course, a part of the state course catalog that districts can offer. There are certain courses that are mandatory for matriculation or graduation, such as U.S. history. Other courses are designated as an elective. African American history, the course is an elective course that students may choose to take. So in Lee County, that has been the result of student interest at the school level that they have elected to take it. So there are certainly African American history related standards and benchmarks within our other courses. It's not like African American history is extracted from the mainline U.S. history course. It's just that this is a special DOE designated course for that. There are others as well that address other special interest topics or historical studies.
Can I ask you to opine whether the standards that are embedded in the other courses are sufficient? Are we giving our students, every student that goes through the required courses, the knowledge that they need?
The benchmarks actually are identical. So the benchmarks within the African American history course are the same that are in the U.S. history course. It's just presented as a more concentrated study and an opportunity for enrichment and deepening of understanding, so that the pace of that course can be more intentional and slower for that particular aspect of history.
Okay, and is this a one semester?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And just one point of that, Ms. Patrica, I think it gives an opportunity to go more in depth. My undergraduate experience, I took a couple of historical overview courses, but then you would take classes 1860 between 1865 to really have a chance to go more in depth in material that is more specific and intentional, very similar to the structure of, we have the Smithsonian Institute, but of course the Smithsonian Institute branches out and has other museums that are completely focused on specific parts of history, cultural groups, or awareness, to make sure that those groups have their due diligence and have the opportunity to go in depth to their factual information and artifacts. So in my mind, that's how I see the distinction of you having it. The standalone course for our high school students for U.S. history provides a great understanding of that particular era in history, picking up in 1860. But this gives an opportunity for the students from the elective course perspective to have the continuum flow of starting pre-Columbian exposure, African kingdoms, and moving forward throughout the course of that semester. And again, as this is just a starting point for it.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Dupree-Bruno?
I was just going to add that there has been discussion with our current chair and with Dr. Atkins about doing a particular type of training that would include some of the African American history that has occurred in Lee County. So we're working on that, as well as another type of training, most likely in January, will be an attorney workshop.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vaughn, please.
Yes, I have several questions. First of all, is there a state-adopted textbook for this course?
There is not, to my knowledge, a state-adopted. Districts go through an adoption process to comply with the state standards of instruction, and that would include public comment and an involved measure there. So I'm not familiar with any one particular textbook. They may recommend a series that could be used as a starting point.
Maybe I phrased that wrong. I'm thinking a book that has been developed by the publishers in order to address all the benchmarks. Do those texts exist, or is this?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, do those textbooks exist?
To the best of my knowledge, the textbooks that exist address U.S. history as the whole course. I'm not familiar, although that does not mean that there isn't a particular textbook for the African American history course itself, although the text would be very similar to what you would get in your U.S. history textbook since the benchmarks are identical.
But if you're doing in depth, I'm very familiar with U.S. history textbooks. And one of the things, and I'm using this term very specifically, they whitewash. Okay, and I'm hoping that a course that we offer, since we're going into depth, they're not whitewashed. And I know there are a lot of, especially in this state, there are a lot of books that, and even for, if we adopt one book for the course, is there a book adopted?
Not at this time. Any book that would be adopted would go through the same textbook adoption cycle as any other of our district materials.
Well, what do they use right now for a text, or are they using a set of different primary sources and supplementary sources and?
Correct. So that's correct. So they have access to the textbook for U.S. history, which would include resources part of that, but also as they're developing, and that's one of the reasons why we're so interested in supporting this, is because they are, one of the first urgencies was, the development of curriculum resources materials in conjunction with the state to identify those. So that would be one of our priorities to supporting the course.
Okay, because typically if we have a state-approved course, the textbook publishers are going to be right on the scene developing a text with those benchmarks so that you don't have to start from ground zero. Although a course like this, I think using supplementaries and primary sources and that sort of thing.
Well, if I may, Dr. K and Ms. Vaughn, we're starting the conversation now. We've really gotten into the zeitgeist of moving forward toward textbook adoption. So as we move toward adopting new textbooks in the future connected to social studies, and I don't want to speak completely for Candace or the curriculum department, but I know there's certain conversations related to elective courses and how the textbooks are adopted for elective courses or used for elective courses. I know at one point there was a textbook that was being utilized as a resource at Lehigh Senior High School, but you have a lot of the teachers bringing in outside resources that they have and things that Dr. K said, coming from our curriculum maps and instructional guides, and then blending those informational texts together between U.S. history and also world history. Because a major part of it, if we talk about the U.S. history standards, but we know a major part of the standards also include the experiences prior to the arrival in the colonies, but understanding the African experience, so they use some of the world history standards. So Candace, do you have any?
Yeah, I realize a lot about that because I have a history background as well as an English literature background. And I know that you're going to have to pull from world history.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm just wondering, I mean, we have a course already that's being taught in these schools with not a great enrollment, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it, but you can't tell me what they use except from pulling from world history and American history books. There needs to be a lot more depth, and in conjunction with that, let me just ask this other question too, because it'll meld with the first one. Will the teachers who are teaching this, and I know professional development, but will it be a requirement that all teachers teaching this have in-depth professional development in this course matter? Because I can see where, sometimes you have a high school and it may be a singleton class, and here's Ms. Jones down the hall, and, oh, Ms. Jones, you're certified in social studies. you're teaching this. I can see that this needs to be very specific in the people who are teaching it, and that's a concern as well for me.
Absolutely, and I'm going to jump in and just add to what Jared had said as well about textbooks and resources, as it's been part of the conversation. And one of the things when Dr. K first started is we have school members on this task force as well, getting their input who have been teaching it, and really tying in, if we build this out, like any of our other elective courses, when teachers are evaluating resources and we're there to support, the larger the course gets is when we go through a district textbook adoption, because we only can spend so many funds to it. However, we talk about this being homegrown as well, and to what Mr. Eady said about engaging with our local partnerships and really focusing in on the local efforts here as well, is looking at that scope and sequence, looking at the standards, pulling on what we have, but then also focusing in on our community to build it. So if we get to the point where it is large enough though, and we would like to look at having one textbook that's a resource as a jumping off point, we would follow that textbook adoption process. The last time the state went through a social studies adoption, there was not a specific textbook for that course, because we're following statute on what books we can adopt, and that was not one that had a specific, but is something we could look at. And then to your other point as well, something that we are very excited about as we have teachers here is, as we continue to build out our leading and learning structures, because this is a smaller course right now with less teachers, we are able to build it and really develop it locally, similar to the way Rita talked about with their CTE and their academy teachers having the Zooms. That has been one of the shifts for us, has caused us to stretch of how are we reaching more teachers. So we also offer those same office hours of jumping on, and we're finding we have much more collaboration across schools. So to your point, we would like to do those same things, that we build out that course, and this allows us to grow it locally to make sure there is the training piece. And then as you've seen, this is a cross-divisional project. So it's not something that just lives in curriculum and instruction. It is spanning multiple divisions as well, as we look at hopefully going for this exemplary status.
Yeah, well, to my last comment and question is, as I said, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of African American history, and I'm very much in favor of this. As a matter of fact, for our demographics here, and I'm not just talking about black students, I think, you know, I would want to take this class if I were in high school. Of course, I loved history, but I think one of the problems with a low enrollment is we're not selling this course, and I guess you have to use history there, but it sounds like it could be a very, very interesting course and something very different to appeal to, since you're doing cross-curricular, I'm assuming you're doing really a humanities class here, because an integral part, especially if you're talking about African American history, and you know, is the Harlem Renaissance and you know, like the roots of rock and roll and art and music and all of those things. That would sell this course. But I can see, as a million years teaching high school, oh, another history course, that sounds really boring. And the final comment is, as much as I love this and support it, and I don't support whitewashing, I'm wondering how the community has reacted, because there's some there's some brutal aspects. And with the emphasis on American exceptionalism instead of truth in history, I worry that there will be the whitewashing, and there won't be, I mean, there's some pretty nasty stuff that went on in Lee County, including, with the baseball teams and everything, and weren't we the last county to integrate in Florida? So there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to want that stuff taught. I think it should be. I'm wondering if that stuff is taught right now, and if there's been community backlash.
I'll take part of it. When you talk about the hard elements of history, I think that's where the community partnerships are very important, and having a university like Florida Gulf Coast University and having partnerships and support from folks like Dr. Blakely and those folks who are on the campus doing critical research and understanding for historical topics that you mentioned, Ms. Vaughn, is really going to be essential to guide us. That was part of our talking point with the task force on the state level. Exactly what you said, to make sure you have the appropriate researchers and the understanding and the right people at the table as you look at your curriculum frameworks.
Just a couple of the points you brought up to add to that. First of all, the enrollment of the course, while certainly we would all like to see it grow, by virtue of being an elective course within social studies where there's already prescribed classes that students have to take, electives tend to be, smaller in nature. There are quite a few electives, like for example at Estero High School there's a Holocaust course, at Eastleigh County there's a Latin American history course. So by virtue of this kind of tapestry of elective courses, the numbers don't tend to add up to the 5,000 type enrollment you'll see with a 11th grade U.S. history. That said, we do believe that through this type of professional development that we've prescribed, that we've structured as part of our strategic plan up here, by teachers becoming more confident and willing to offer the course, by teachers doing who are already doing a great job. For example, Charles Morrison, one of our teachers of the year last year for social studies, is one of those teachers. By encouraging and empowering our teachers to teach the course with fidelity and well, we think that will generate student interest. As students see the course being taught well, they will gravitate toward it. Also regarding the curriculum, like any other DOE course, we teach the standards of the course. And so within that framework, and as a partner of the African American History Task Force, we believe that the teaching of that course and having a great partner in the task force, African American History Task Force itself, will help us to teach that course to the best and what it deserves as a history course. Jared, if you want to add anything about local community partners.
Sure.
and
And
incorporating
just
that.
one last point.
These are high school students, not college students.
Absolutely, and just like the Holocaust course or like the Latin American history course, there are certain levels of discretion you have to apply. I mean, Holocaust Education Week is next week, and that's K-12, and certainly at the primary K-2 levels, there are certain aspects that, would be appropriate for grade level students. So that's part of the leading and learning, and part of the cooperation with the state is understanding those frameworks and how to best incorporate those into classroom instruction.
And just as another consideration, Ms. Vaughn, through the connections with the task force, there's actually a summer institute that they provide to allow teachers to go through that experience. Our partners with EverFi, who do a lot of financial literacy support, they have an online platform where they'll train the teachers at free and no cost to the district to be able to access and how to navigate through and the support for the teachers. And then finally, working with the Lee County Black History Society through some of the diversity and inclusion support from Title IV, there could be opportunities to bring our teachers in to do further professional development / curriculum design over the summer on a small cohort basis.
With college and university collaboration as well, which would help toward making sure that academically we are incorporating the best practices.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Morgan, please.
Yeah, I have two comments. The first comment is, I think, as Dr. Kay said, I think you offer local history and you will generate a lot of interest. And my second comment is, there are a lot of conversations we need to have in Lee County, and I think when you start from a point of fact, then it becomes much easier to have that conversation. So I think what you're doing is terrific, and I'm absolutely in support of doing something that starts locally and builds knowledge and creates conversation and then takes us where we need to go. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, did you have anything? No? Is anyone else? Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the
Thank you.
information.
Gordon, I do believe that they were asking for a board consensus to move forward with their project with regards to the, let me pull it up here.
Yeah.
Exemplary school. I believe that's
For
what they
support
were
of the
seeking
exemplary
consensus for
status.
that.
Okay, do we have a consensus for them to move forward with it? It's unanimous, thank you. I apologize, I didn't see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any public?
At this time, we do not have any public comments.
Okay, so seeing we have none, we'll move on. Oh, and hi, Miss Edie. Thank you for coming. Sorry, I had to do that. Now we have board comments, and I am going to start with Miss Morgan.
Okay, I have two comments. I guess a kick and a kudo. Kudos to my colleagues who are reelected. Congratulations. The kick is of me. At our last board briefing meeting, I spoke in a way to Erin Grunwald, which was really unacceptable. And I've apologized to her. And I want staff to know that this is not how I expect to conduct myself at the table. It was unnecessary to grill her the way I did. She was very proud of the work that she and her department had done. And by my conduct, I undermined what she had accomplished. And on reflection and based on a comment made to me by a colleague, I realized that what I had done was really unfortunate. And I just don't want another staff member to be anxious coming into this forum feeling that, they have to watch out for me. I was boorish, and I really do regret that behavior, and I don't think that's the way we do business here, and I should not have done that. So I just wanted to make that public comment to everyone. So, thank you. Those are my comments.
Ms. Gittens, please.
Thank you for the segue, Ms. Morgan. And I would also like to, when I brought up the situation about a paralegal at the last meeting, and I want to publicly apologize to Ms. Tortosa because it was in no way, shape, or form any type of discussion about her work, which is exemplary and has been at least the whole time that I've been here. I spoke with her about that the next morning, and it was, I just wanted to make sure that it's out there. I was not saying at all that she is not doing her job, which she does very well, and I appreciate you and thank you, and I apologize if there was any misconception. A lot of things have been going on. I will have hopefully have pictures up this evening, but yesterday I went to G. Weaver Hips because I'm involved in a project with some girls over there. And as I walked in, they were having voting, and they had gotten some of the stand-up voting machines from Leave Votes and all that, and the kids were filing in, and to see a group of kindergartners all excited about voting, and to have to stand up on the little step stools to get up there to do their vote. The kindergartners voted for, they had like superheroes as the president and all of that, and also board members. They had a section for board members, and we had two superhero women that won with the kindergartners, and then they also had the K through 5 do the just for the presidential candidates that we have now. And just to see the excitement on the kids, and the joke was that I walked in and suddenly became the assistant supervisor of elections was quite funny. And then so we were counting votes and all of that. But it's really good just to see how students are being taught to be involved with the process. A couple of other things that I'll just mention in my comments this evening, and I just want to say too, I am not. I see some of the looks and some of the sighs when I start talking about East Zone. It is just something with me. I know we represent the whole district and all children. But I will continue to say if I feel that there are things that are not equitable, I will be bringing them up. I feel that that's my fiduciary duty to do that. And if there is something that can be done about it or something that somebody didn't consider, that's what I feel our job is to bring things like that to the board for their consideration. Part of the reason that I bring up things is I have very often brought up something, or we have asked questions, and the next thing we know, it's like, well, it's too late, that's already in the works, it's already being done. And I don't agree with that. I think that all comments and all suggestions of all board members need to be considered. So that's why I continue to bring it up. And if there's any, issues, I will continue to do so. And I appreciate the time. The rest will be this evening.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
I actually don't have that much. I just do have a question regarding, for Dr. Atkins, regarding quarantining. I'm hearing a lot of students are getting sent home, and I think I sent one email where they're getting sent home 14 days, and then they get back to school and they get sent back home another 14 days. So what is the process like? What about like expedited testing? We had talked about that and getting them back in the classroom and that kind of situation, because I've got some frustrated parents that as soon as they get them back there, they're sent back home again. So,
Well, I'll address some of that, and then we can, of course, give you a little bit more information in our board update. So I'll get, that way I can get the latest from Ms. Stillwell. I don't see her out there right now. I do know she continues to work with there she is. She continues to work with our local partners in terms of testing, if you want to address that part. And I know the tracing, there have been some challenges with the tracing and the quarantining because the time that it takes sometimes to get these tests back. And then some of the behavior that we see out of unfortunately, some of the students that are supposed to be quarantined. So I don't know if you want to.
And that's another thing.
The DOH really oversees the quarantining and isolation for us, and so they will do the contact tracing, and then they will give us the dates that the students can return. So if they're being isolated more than once, my conjecture is that they're being exposed more than once, and so that's why, or they potentially are contacts that are turning into cases, and in that case, they might have to stay out for longer. Because originally they were quarantined, but then if they turn into a case, that might extend the time that they're out. But we take our cue really from the DOH, who provides us the dates that the students and the staff can return.
So how are they making it work, though? Because that's the concern. They can't get on Home Connect. That's what I'm being told. There's not that option for them. So are they just getting their work or for makeup?
Yeah, I'm looking at Dr. Spiro a little bit. I know that my understanding is that it's up to the teachers in the schools how they want to handle that. And so in some cases, there are students that are hopping on Lee Home Connect, and then there are others where they're using the Google Classroom in order to access their lessons.
Okay. So, and here's the other issue is like, and this has to do with the health department, but I think something we need to have a conversation about, because when they're contact tracing, they're not really thorough with that. They're not getting the girlfriend, and they're not getting the sibling and the household. So you've got one sibling that's quarantined, but the other one's going to school every day. So
well, and it depends. Yes. So if it's a case, then yes, there would be a quarantine. If it's an exposure, then a sibling will not be quarantined. So it depends on the situation in the home as well. And I do know that that we've tried to shore up some of that by looking ourselves that if we know that there is an actual case, then our COVID hotline is going ahead and looking for other siblings in the home so that we can notify the DOH that those folks have to quarantine as well. So we're working on that, but it really depends on the situation too, especially if you maybe don't live all together, but you're moving back and forth between different homes. So there are definitely a lot of things that come into play. And unfortunately, we're seeing, and this would probably be a lesson that we're going to ask our healthcare providers to help us with. We're seeing a lot of parents sending their kids to school symptomatic still. And then we're also seeing a lot of cases where folks are keeping their kids home who are symptomatic, but are not testing them, and then testing them like 5 or 6 days after the students have been home and finding out they're positive. And in reality, we should have quarantined other kids in the school like a week before, but we're not getting notified of positive tests until way far into the time that the parents are keeping them home. So it's we're seeing a little bit more of that, and then we're also simply seeing that folks aren't just getting tested.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Exactly, because if they don't think they're sick, and they may just be symptomatic, they don't even feel sick, then, and they're not testing, then we're gonna have a huge problem.
Yeah, we don't have any way of knowing at that point.
And I think parents have decided to not test, and so somehow we need to help them get the test, and that way that we get that behind us and we have information that we can go by, real information. So I'm concerned over that, because do we know like who's actually testing positive and like that kind of number? We need and that includes our own staff, that whoever that's getting quarantined, so students and staff. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to sort through this, because we're just getting information that's not, everybody's doing their own thing, truthfully, I think, it sounds like to me. So we're gonna have to set some kind of guidelines or something. And
well, I mean, we have the guidelines, but honestly, I mean, it's a parent's choice as to how they handle the health of their student, and so we can't necessarily dictate that.
Well, I get that,
Yeah.
but I get that. But I think that if we did the expedited testing, then and the results, that would keep things moving along a little bit better. And
to your point about that, we are working with Lee Health, and hopefully I'll be able to come in give you guys some update at the workshop on the 16th, because we are hoping to move forward and have some meetings this week with the county about helping fund testing in our schools. We have the tests, we have about 2,000 of them, and so we are working with Lee Health on a way for that they would administer the tests, and then they would get reimbursed using CARES Act dollars through the county. And so those are conversations that are moving forward, and we're hoping to bring something to you, an agreement with Lee Health on the 17th, and I would brief you before then on the 16th of how we would implement using those tests in the schools.
that sounds good, because, we just need to, I don't know, get a better handle on it. I don't think we have a very good handle on it, so. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Patrica?
I think, Ms. Stillwell, that you have worked incredibly well with Lee Health and that you have a tremendously good handle on this, so I appreciate that. My only comment is that I think we have violated the Constitution today, and we will violate the Constitution tonight. There's a ban against cruel and unusual punishment. I believe it's cruel and unusual to hold a board meeting the day after an election. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Can I let Ms. Vaughn do her comments first?
Yeah, it was about what Mrs. Giovanelli had
Well,
said.
I was going to say something about that too. Okay, so.
Ms. Vaughn?
So, yeah, the first thing actually I hadn't thought about, but since Ms. Giovanelli brought it up, I was going to ask about those quick tests. Ms. Stillwell. So we do, let me make sure I understood what you said. So we do have, you said 2,000 of the.
Yes, we have 40 boxes that consist of 2,000 tests. They were delivered a couple weeks ago by the DOE, by the state. We don't know if we're going to be getting any more. We haven't heard, and so we have them here, and we're ready to use them once we've executed our agreement with Lee Health.
Because one of the things that's important.
So we have, okay, my question is, so we have them, but we're not able to use them.
Correct.
Correct.
Is it because, like a school nurse wouldn't be able to?
Yeah, we don't have the
We
certification.
don't have the CLIA. There's something called a CLIA waiver that we would need. And so what we have done is that Lee Health has been amazing through all of this, the partnerships that we've formed there. And so they have that, and they're able to do that under their health fairs CLIA waiver. Dr. Antonucci has given permission to do that. And so now what we're doing, and Kathy has been instrumental in this, Ms. Bruno, in helping us do an MOU with Lee Health.
Okay.
So that we would be able then to have that agreement so that under their waiver, they would be able to perform the testing for us. Because we don't have the proper.
Okay, yeah, that was the piece I didn't understand, because I thought we had those, and like, hey, if we have them.
We've got them, we
Okay,
just can't
we
use
got
them
them,
at
we
this
can't,
point.
okay, I get it now, so
Yep.
that clarifies that. Now, the only other thing I was going to say is, I thought the two presentations today were really excellent as far as just letting us know as a board on pieces of the curriculum that are being developed, really important pieces of the curriculum, I think. And I just want to say, you know, I'm probably an infamous questioner, and sorry out there, that's just me, maybe from my days of teaching, but inquiring minds want to know. And I think we've proven that, for instance, there was something Ms. Morgan said, I think, when Ms. Davis was presenting, and she said, oh, that's a really good idea. And I think every now and then we have good ideas about, you know, the nuts and bolts of things that are happening in the district. So I really enjoyed getting to know much more about the curriculum with career and technical, and this the African American history. That's something that I've been wanting to see developed in full, and if I ask a lot of questions about it, it's because I have a love of history and literature, and I have a lot of background in that, and I also have the feeling that if we teach classes like that, we need to teach them when we get to the high schools. There's some nasty facts, but if we're really going to be genuine in what we teach, there's going to have to be a shock factor, and there's a lot of shock factor in all of that history. I mean, we don't have to show graphic pictures, but sometimes the literature and the primary sources will paint very graphic pictures, and you don't have to see them as a drawing. And sometimes what is created in the mind is the most effective thing. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Gittens, you have one thing to add?
Why do you tell me one every time you call on me? Anyway.
I'm recalling on you.
I'm sorry. I guess I'll take a page from Ms. Vaughn. I have questions. Ms. Giovanelli mentioned about the COVID situation, and I have a question about that as well. That in our agreement or whatever we voted in, it was to follow CDC guidelines, and I've gotten several calls and questions from parents as to how closely are we still following that. And also the dashboard that we see on the website right now for the district uses the state documentation. And at one point there was something that was off with that. So, you know, parents look on there and they see the state numbers that for COVID for our area, but then they're told that DOH is 10 days behind. So how are we keeping up? How are we allowing parents to know exactly, you know, how far behind we are on presenting to them the dashboard and what's actually happening? And especially since, you know, 10,000 students just returned to school.
Well, I have at least weekly, if not multiple, calls with the DOH. That's news to me that they're 10 days behind. I mean, they report to the state every day, and so I don't think that report that we post is lacking in any data because it's week by week. So we put that up there because we were hearing that people wanted to know the number of cases per school, and they wanted to know staff, and they wanted to know students. And so that's why we chose to put that up there, because it was more comprehensive than what we had on our website to begin with.
And is there any way, and this is what a parent called me yesterday and said that they spoke to someone because they were called to say that their child needed to quarantine for the next 5 or 6 days because, and they questioned why that amount of time, and they said, well, we're about 10 days behind, so it should have happened at this particular time, and they did mention that they keep asking for additional workers because they can't keep up with it. So, and the other part of it is with the quarantines, is that, listen, and it kind of goes with what Ms. Giovanelli was saying, the quarantines are, I don't know. I don't know academically what we can do to help kids keep up and, with their lessons if they're quarantined. And some kids are just over and over again quarantined because the kids they're around seem to just keep getting, symptomatic or whatever.
And so from the DOH perspective, the last conversation that I had is if it's taking 10 days, it's most likely because they're not getting notification of testing until that period of time. Typically what they're trying to do for us is turn it around within 24 to 48 hours. There have been some cases that have been longer when we've needed to provide more information, like seating charts or distances, that some of the stuff that we've sent over might not have been as specific as what they need. But for them, it's really 48 hours is what their time
That's
frame
what
is
they're
in notifying
saying.
and doing the contact tracing.
And when a child is symptomatic in the school, who reports that then, the parent or the school?
So typically what happens is that both. What will happen is that if we have a student go to the isolation room or in the clinic, we'll call the parent, we'll ask them to fill out the notification form, and we'll help them do that. Or they can call the COVID hotline and we'll help them do that. And then if we don't get a notification form for symptoms, then school staff can fill it out. And it's the same way for exposures and then positive cases. But when we get information about a positive case, we share that with the DOH. It might not be, we might know on like a Friday somebody puts in a notification form, but if the lab that tests that child or staff member doesn't upload their documents to the DOH in a timely fashion, then that can put us back in time as well, because the DOH obviously isn't going to confirm that to us until they have a positive lab.
So when, and if a child that is within the parameter of someone who is positive and is quarantined, when they come back, do they have to have a doctor's note or a test?
No. Typically at that point we'll be notified by the DOH that they need to quarantine, and they will provide us a date of return, and then we send out to the school and the schools know, so that the kids just come back on that day.
And who, are you the only one in the district then that coordinates between DOH and DOE and all those Ds?
I've learned quite a bit over the past 6 months, things that I never thought I would have to know before, like Binax Now and CLIA waivers and all that good stuff. I'm a primary contact for the DOH, but really Beth Whipf and Vicki Otto, who work in the COVID hotline, also are super supportive, and they talk with the DOH every day as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I will say too, I do have my grandchildren in the school, and I have seen where they have sent letters home immediately, and the phone calls, I mean, they do the follow-up very quickly. And there was a case where somebody was doing sports and they had it out there, but we were still notified. So as far as the notification, they're really on top of that. I really do appreciate it, because it does make everybody very nervous when it comes to COVID.
Real quick, though, I can add to that, because yeah, they might get the notification, but when they actually get the quarantine is where when the health department's contacting them. I've already had parents tell me when they call them, they're like, oh, well, I'm sorry, we're behind. We were supposed to contact you last week. So, oh, they can go back to school today. Well, they never were quarantined. So they missed it completely, 14 days. So there is a problem with it. And I don't know where the problem is. I don't know if it's on our end or if it's on their end. And that's really what I was trying to get to now is because, I mean, if they can go back the day they're supposed to be they're getting quarantined, that they've been exposing or being exposed
and I don't know how
vice versa.
we solve that, because I know it's like some are doing it like perfect, it's like on point.
I'm certainly happy to ask the DOH, because that's not something that we do. I mean, we don't quarantine, the DOH does, so I can ask them certainly about, you know, their processes and stuff, but when we've talked, if that's the case, it's been very rare. And again, it's mostly because they're not getting testing results back until later into the time the person is sick. And so while, yes, they might have had to quarantine 14 days ago, if the DOH isn't getting notified until 5 days ago, we've just lost 9 days.
Right. I think that's what's happening.
That's not something that anybody is going to know about unless a guardian or a parent is doing that notification.
Yes.
The other thing in terms of just educating parents and students that when you are quarantined, it means quarantined. And unfortunately, we know of instances where, you know, another student may have turned in, another student that's supposed to have been quarantined and they had contact with that student, and the student wasn't supposed to be anywhere, and we're talking about outside of the school. You know, they get together as friends and they have contact, and of course then you wind up with somebody positive, and then, you know, you start the reporting process. You know, I kind of jokingly said this is, we've actually had situations where a student reports to DOH, no, this is where I've been, that's it, and then a fellow student turns them in for being at that particular event. And so those are the types of things I think we use this as an educational opportunity to talk to our parents and students about the importance of when you are contacted by DOH, please follow those quarantining guidelines so that we have less and less of this. I do think that you know, staff, we report it as soon as we are aware of it. I believe DOH, I believe they've been a really good partner, but the whole testing layers in and complicates it. You know, I think that's where a lot of these situations come into play. And we've had cases where, you know, kids symptomatic, mom, dad keeps them home, gets them tested, but never talks to us about it. And then symptoms are over, send the kid back to school, and then the test comes in, you know, days later, and then, you know, kid's already back in school, and if they had just, you know, stayed there, and that was something we had no control over, it was because we didn't have any knowledge that kid had symptoms at some point.
Mm-hmm. And I did have a great conversation with a contact tracer this week, and I didn't realize that that's what she was until she, you know, shared all the information with me, and how she was speaking on how great it is as soon as, you know, they are contacted, then they get the map of, you know, where the children are sitting, and exactly what Dr. Atkins had just said as well, how then when they get into that further conversation, they find out that Johnny was over here and he was at the playground and he went swimming, and then they have to do a whole nother ream of it. So it's just a touchy situation, and we have to keep trying to do the best that we can do to make sure that everybody is safe. And I don't really have any comments. Do you have anything else to say, Ms. Chibnall?
No,
Okay.
I'm concerned.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're all concerned. And moving right along, Ms. Dupree Bruno, do you have any comments today?
Thank you. First, congratulations to all the board members that were reelected. Dr. Atkins and I are looking forward to onboarding, but it's the same board. So one of the things that we were thinking about is how can we onboard with giving the board an opportunity to reset, and this is a new opportunity to come up with collective goals and collective priorities as a board. So one of the things that will be coming on your calendar is a workshop on roles and responsibilities, and it will be based very much on the statute. So I want to go through the statute with everyone and explain some of the statutory requirements, and I hope that even our more seasoned board members will be able to get something out of this workshop. In addition, we'll talk about goals and priorities, as well as there's some other workshops that will be coming down the pipe that I think will assist the board with moving forward in a very cohesive and an opportunity to be an exemplary board and a role model and strengthen the governance team. In addition, I attended CASA, Council of School Board Attorneys Conference. It was 2 weeks, but it was kind of elongated because it was a virtual conference, and it was an excellent conference, about 6 days every afternoon, and there were all kinds of different topics that were discussed, so I really enjoyed that. It was the Education Law Practice Seminar, and that is my comments.
I'm jumping in because I did forget. Congratulations to both of you, and I look forward to continuous work. Dr. Atkins, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just real quick, again, also I'll echo the congratulations for our 2 returning board members. So looking forward to really working together with the same team for another 2 years. So that's exciting that you really don't have to hopefully do a lot of onboarding, but we can really get right to work. The second thing, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware we are monitoring a tropical storm that is in the area. So we're starting to, of course, it's 2020, and we are at the cone at this point. So Mr. Parfit will continue to send updates out. This is something that, we're looking for, potential to have some impact over the weekend and maybe into Monday if it does come here. But there's a lot of things that could happen in the meantime. So it's just something that we're watching right now, but just, again, everybody should be aware that it's out there and look toward Mr. Parfit's updates as we move forward toward the end of the week and into the weekend. And that's all for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything for the good of the order?
They just did that with the comments.
I'm sorry?
With the board comments, that was good of the order.
Okay. Well, it's on here, so I'm just reading down the list. Okay. Well, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned, and it is 4:08. And thank you very much.